Chapter 5:16. 10 years ago, the Miao family in Lini, East Yen was still a very weak family. They were not bullied all day long, but at least in the whole East Yen, they were not ranked. Only in recent years, when Miao Chun Mao stepped into the unity of heaven and human beings realm, did the Miao family feel better. Although in the eyes of the real top gurus, the integration of heaven and human beings could only be said to be not bad, in East Yen, the integration of heaven and human beings was enough to be called a master. Therefore, the Miao family could be considered to have really risen. At night, the Miao family's mansion was brightly lit. The whole Miao family had been holding a banquet to celebrate the real rise of the Miao family in recent days. Miao Chun Mao had sent them a message, asking them to prepare to move the Miao family to Liaodong County. The martial arts forces in the East Yen were not weak, and the division of forces had been very perfect. Therefore, if the Miao family wanted to rise in the East Yen, they had to compete with others. The decline of a force could represent the rise of another force. However, except for Miao Chun Mao, the strength of the Miao family was too weak to compete at all. Therefore, Miao Chun Mao could only think of another way to take the initiative to join the Righteous Manor Alliance, lay a foundation in Liaodong, and then move the family there. In this way, the Miao family could really develop. At this time, Chu Xiao came to the gate of the Miao family with He Zhan and the others, but they were surprised to find that there was not even a guard in the whole Miao family. Chu Xiao and the others looked at each other. Was the Miao family too happy or too arrogant? How could the defense be so lax? Of course, it did not matter even if there was a defense. Anyway, in the eyes of the warriors in the unity of heaven and human beings realm, it was nothing. When the door was opened, some servants along the way wanted to scold Chu Xiao when they saw him. However, Chu Xiao looked at them and used his powerful spiritual force to directly freeze them there, making them unable to say a word. It was not until Chu Xiao pushed open the inner door of the lobby that the people of the Miao family found Chu Xiao. They were stunned for a long time, and then a middle-aged man with a flushed face came out. He walked towards Chu Xiao and shouted angrily, "Who are you? Trespassing into my Miao family. Are you tired of living?" However, before he could reach Chu Xiao's eyes shone with a dim light. In an instant, a powerful spiritual power surged into the middle-aged man's head. Bang! Like a watermelon bursting, red and white juice splashed everywhere. Everyone present was about to cry out in surprise, but an extremely terrifying demonic aura was released from Chu Xiao's body. The cold and deep aura immediately suppressed everyone's cries of surprise. Chu Xiao put a finger in front of his face and made a shushing gesture. "Shu, don't talk. If you make any more noise, you'll die." The warriors of the Miao family immediately fell silent. They covered their mouths and didn't dare to make a sound. At this time, Chu Xiao wore an expressionless black iron mask. The demonic aura around him was monstrous. Coupled with the horrible corpse on the ground, he was just like those horrible demons who ate human blood and drank human blood in the legends. "Who is Miao Chun Mao's son?" Chu Xiao asked. No one present answered. "If you don't tell me, I'll start killing them one by one." Chu Xiao said this in a calm tone, but it made everyone present tremble at the same time. They immediately pointed out a young man. Looking at the trembling young man, Chu Xiao said lightly, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. Your life or death depends on your father. Now write a letter to your father and ask him to go back to Yendong. As long as your father makes the right choice, you don't have to die." Looking at the trembling young man writing the letter, He Zhan and Lin Mutong looked at each other. Was it really that simple? It seemed that it was really that simple. At this time, Miao Chun Mao was still in Liaodong, but it was very easy for him to go back to Yendong. Pang Hu led the people of Chilian Stockade Village and split up. Although the Loyalty Manor Alliance was still searching for them, Pang Hu and the others deliberately kept a low profile, so the Loyalty Manor Alliance had little effect. Different from the other aristocratic families who brought a large number of people to join the alliance, because the Miao family was too weak, only Miao Chun Mao came to join the Loyalty Manor Alliance. In this kind of search, his effect was limited, so Miao Chun Mao was very free during this period. After receiving the news from his family, Miao Chun Mao didn't feel anything unusual. He thought that the Miao family was ready to move to Liaodong. So Miao Chun Mao went straight back to the Miao family. When he opened the door of the Miao family, he felt something was wrong. Miao Chun Mao was now the pillar of the entire Miao family. Now that he was back, the Miao family should have someone to welcome him. Why was there not even a shadow? However, Miao Chun Mao still subconsciously pushed open the Miao family's door. What he saw was a group of people from the Miao family. Although they were not tied up, their faces were pale. There was also Chu Xiao and the others who had moved chairs over and sat in the middle. Miao Chuan Mao's first reaction was to run. But before he could move, Chu Xiao said lightly, "If you run, I will kill your whole family. If you stay, you still have a chance to live." Miao Chuan Mao's movement froze. He turned around and closed the door. He shouted at Chu Xiao in a low voice, "You are from Qilian Stockade Village? Family should not be involved." Qilian Stockade Village ignored the rules of Jianghu. Do you really not care about anything? The Miao family was considered low profile in the past. Other than Qilian Stockade Village, Miao Chun Mao really could not think of anyone else who would do such a thing. Moreover, Miao Chun Mao had never thought that Qilian Stockade Village would do such a thing. It was not that Miao Chun Mao was naive. It was because even when Qilian Stockade Village was one of the 36 bandits of the north, they only robbed the imperial court and some big sex caravans. Qilian Stockade Village had never done such a despicable thing like using family members to threaten others. Moreover, Miao Chun Mao subconsciously thought that even if Qilian Stockade Village wanted revenge, it would definitely be against the memorial villa. How could his small Miao family be noticed by the other party? Chu Xiao said lightly, "Jianghu rules? Qilian Stockade Village was almost forced to death by your memorial villa alliance. Why would they care about Jianghu rules? There has never been a rule in Jianghu that only you can kill my whole family, but I cannot kill your whole family." Miao Chuan Mao's face showed a trace of bitterness. He said dejectedly, "Everyone, I, Miao Chun Mao, admit defeat. You can kill me if you want, but please leave a trace of my Miao family's bloodline. Moreover, even if you really want to wipe out my Miao family, other than being able to vent your anger, there is not much meaning. It was the memorial villa who wanted to wipe you out, not my Miao family. Even if I die, the result will be the same." If Miao Chun Mao was a heartless person, he could have just left and told Nie Renlong about this. He would have cried and complained that he had made such a great contribution to the alliance, but in the end, he was implicated and his whole family was killed. Regardless of whether Nie Renlong was a hypocrite, even if it was just for his reputation, he had to treat Miao Chun Mao, who had sacrificed so much for the alliance, well. It was a pity that Miao Chun Mao was not a heartless person. He could not let go of his family, his wife and children. Chu Xiao said lightly, "Of course, I know that killing you or your whole family will not solve anything. Otherwise, do you think you can still stand here alive? I will give you a chance to not die." "What chance?" Miao Chun Mao asked. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said, "It's very simple. Stand on my side and lie in ambush at the memorial villa. Do whatever I tell you to do." Miao Chuan Mao's expression suddenly changed and he said quickly, "You are sending me to my death again. Moreover, if I really become a spy, it is equivalent to offending the entire memorial villa. There will be no place for me in the entire northern Yen." Miao Chun Mao was considered a veteran in the eastern Yen martial arts world. He had personally seen how the memorial villa had risen, so he was very clear about what kind of person Nie Renlong was. If he betrayed Nie Renlong, he would definitely end up very, very badly. Chu Xiao said coldly, "If there is no place for you in the northern Yen, then go to eastern Qi or western Chu. The world is so big. Do you think there is no place for you? This is a single-choice question. You have no choice. If you become a spy, you may die, but your family can live. If you don't, I will send you and your whole family to hell. You should know which one to choose." Cold sweat appeared on Miao Chuan Mao's forehead. In the end, Miao Chun Mao had no choice but to agree. If he agreed, he would die in the future. If he didn't, he would die right now. So it was very easy to choose. Chu Xiao stood up and said, "Don't even think about telling Nie Renlong about this and asking him to come and save your family. I'll arrange for people to stay here. Once the situation changes, they'll at least take your family down with them. Killing people is always faster than saving people, even if the other party is a martial Dao grandmaster. Besides, the next task I will give you is not difficult. You only need to use words to provoke those people in the martial arts world of Eastern Yen to go to the extreme north. It will be best if you can get into conflict with some of the martial arts world forces in the extreme north. Remember, the bigger the conflict, the better." Miao Chun Mao was not stupid. He immediately knew what Chu Xiu was planning. He looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of surprise. This guy, he obviously wanted to make things worse. Chu Xiu looked back at Lin Mutong and the others and said, "The division has been successful, so it is time for the last step. This step will take a little longer. Lin Mutong, take some people to guard here. If something goes wrong, immediately slaughter the Miao family. He Zhan, Han Bao, follow me back to Liaodong Prefecture." Among Pang Hu's men, Lin Mutong was the more rational one. Chu Xiu could rest assured leaving this place to him. As for He Zhan, he was impulsive and easily angered. Although he was loyal to Pang Hu, he could easily ruin things. It was better to keep him by his side and only be responsible for the fighting. Chapter 5:17. The north of the country of Yan was the most desolate place in the entire northern Yan. It was even more sparsely populated than Liaodong County. Although its area was several times the size of Liaodong County, it was still collectively known as the North. There were no counties or counties. Further north of the northern lands was the northern drifting snow city. The entire northern lands was considered as the sphere of influence of the northern drifting snow city. As for the places further north of the northern drifting snow city, they were basically desolate and uninhabited. Only a force like the Great Guangming Temple would establish their sect in such a place, and in the name of tempering their will. At this moment, in a small town in the north of the country of Yan, a disguised Pang Hu was drinking with Chu Xiu. Pang Hu frowned and said, "Mr. Lin, you asked the Qilian stockade to retreat. We have already retreated. You said you wanted to break up the Morgue Village alliance, but in the end, you only instigated a small character. Now at the last step, you said you want to borrow power. Whose power do you want to borrow?" During this period of time, the Qilian stockade was scattered, but the Morgue Village still managed to capture some of our brothers. There were more than 100 casualties. The Qilian stockade does not have much time to wait. Chu Xiu poured a cup of wine for Pang Hu and said faintly, "Don't be anxious, Chief Pang. Haste makes waste. This time, I not only want to save the Qilian stockade, I also want to severely damage the Morgue Village. As for the layout, of course, we need to be more cautious. As for whose power do I want to borrow, it's very simple. Since I have lured the Morgue Village to the north, naturally I want to borrow the power of the northern floating snow city." Pang Hu was not an idiot. He immediately understood what Chu Xiu meant. However, Pang Hu frowned and said, "You want to sow discord between the Morgue Village and the northern floating snow city? But Nye Renlong is not an idiot. Nye Donglu, that little bastard, is also very shrewd. They will not fall into the trap. The Morgue Village should know that their main goal now is to occupy Liaodong County and annihilate the Qilian stockade. It is not wise to provoke the northern floating snow city at this time." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Nye Renlong and Nye Donglu are indeed not idiots, but they can't resist the temptation of greed. The higher they stood, the harder they fell. The dozens of forces in the Loyalty Village Alliance took over Liaodong County without bloodshed. Didn't they want to go further? Since ancient times, the alliance had always collapsed internally. Otherwise, why would I let Miao Chun Mao be a spy? At that time, if one faction took advantage of the situation, how could the other factions sit still? How could the Morgue stop them? I know this group of people very well. When you let them profit, they will support you. But when you stop them from profiting, they will not be so obedient." Pang Hu took a deep look at Chu Xiu. Were all these fellows from the demonic path so sinister? But from Pang Hu's point of view, these fellows from the righteous path were not easy to deal with. Otherwise, why would the Kunlun devil cult lose so badly? Gulping down the wine in his cup, Pang Hu said in a deep voice, "Then I'll wait for a while longer. I hope that you won't disappoint me. I believe in Mei Qinglian. The person she recommended shouldn't be wrong." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't worry, Commander Pang. You can use this time to recover from your injuries. At the last moment, there will still be a fierce battle." Pang Hu snorted, "Last time, I did not expect the one who attacked was not that hypocrite Nye Renlong, but Han Baxian. I was seriously injured because of a moment of carelessness. I will not make this mistake again." With that, Pang Hu turned and left, leaving Chu Xiu to pour himself a cup of wine and drink by himself. Looking out the window at the snowy scenery, Chu Xiu's eyes were even colder than the wind and snow of the northern lands. The enemy was in the light while he was in the dark. This time, as long as there were no accidents, Nie Donglu would not be able to escape. At this time, Nie Donglu, who was far away in Liaodong, suddenly felt a chill around his body, as if he was being targeted by something terrifying. Nie Donglu shook his head to get rid of this feeling. At this time, someone from the morgue delivered some information. At first, Nie Donglu thought that some force had found more warriors from Chilean village and killed them to claim credit. However, after reading the contents, Nie Donglu was so angry that he tore the information into shreds. Nie Donglu was so angry that he tore it up. These idiots! The information said that the forces in the alliance had attacked without permission, using the Chilean village bandits as an excuse to attack some forces in the north. Liaodong County is such a big territory, but it's not enough for them to digest. These idiots actually went to the north to cause trouble. What are they trying to do? Nie Donglu waved his hand and said, "Go, find me the leaders of those families who did not follow the rules." A few days later, the heads of the 6 forces came to Nie Donglio's place. Among them was Miao Chun Mao. In fact, this matter was instigated by Miao Chun Mao from the beginning. Chu Xiu only gave Miao Chun Mao one mission, and that was to instigate the other martial arts forces to attack the north. In fact, Miao Chun Mao did not need to instigate them. The leaders of the other forces were already tempted. The north was not the territory of the fluttering snow city. So what if they occupied some of it? Now that they were not alone, they were with the morgue. Why would they be afraid of the fluttering snow city? With this mentality, this group of people was provoked by Miao Chun Mao and started to act first and report later. Even they themselves did not realize that Miao Chun Mao was provoking them. Nie Donglu looked at the 6 people in front of him and said with a gloomy expression, "Who allowed you to invade the north? Do you know that this will anger the fluttering snow city?" Everyone present looked at each other, and one of them said hesitantly, "Young master, it's not necessary, right? The north is so big. Can the fluttering snow city control all of it?" Nie Donglu snorted coldly and said, "It's better to be safe than sorry. If the fluttering snow city finds out about this, it will definitely cause a misunderstanding. Our current target is not the fluttering snow city, so why bother making things difficult for them? This matter will be dropped for now. But from now on, you can no longer act first and report later, and cross the border to the north." Although in terms of status, Nie Donglu was much higher than the heads of the families present, in terms of seniority, he was still a junior in the pugilistic world. Nie Donglu also had to protect his own reputation, so it was not appropriate for him to start reprimanding the heads of the families now. He could only remind them. Although the people present agreed verbally, they did not take it seriously in their hearts. Back then, they were willing to join the Loyalty Manor Alliance because they wanted to find a backer, and not worry about being swallowed up by it. Now they were considered people of the Loyalty Manor Alliance, but in the end, Nie Donglu told them not to provoke the fluttering snow city. No matter how they looked at it, this action seemed a little cowardly, and this made the people present somewhat unhappy. After they left, the people present looked at each other, and someone asked, "Since the young master has given the order, then we can only stop?" Miao Chun Mao chuckled and said, "Everyone, I don't care if you want to stop, but I won't stop. My Miao family has a weak foundation, different from you. This time, I took the risk to join the Loyalty Manor Alliance because I want to fight for a future for my Miao family, or else why would I fight to the death with the Chilean stronghold? Now that the benefits are right in front of me, how can I just let it go? The young master is a little too cautious, the north is so big, how can the fluttering snow city control all of it? Moreover, why did we join the Loyalty Manor Alliance? To put it bluntly, first, it's for benefits, and second, it's to find a backer. If the Loyalty Manor Alliance can't even deal with the fluttering snow city, then what's the point of our alliance existing? Why don't we just disband?" After saying that, Miao Chun Mao directly turned around and left, but at this moment, a trace of cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. These words were what Chu Xiu asked him to say, but if these words were heard by Nie Donglu, he would probably be in trouble. Now, Miao Chun Mao could only gamble that among these people, there was no one who was loyal to the Loyalty Manor Alliance. In fact, Miao Chun Mao's gamble was right. The remaining 5 people's expressions were also uncertain. No one knew what they were thinking. If all 6 of them were to stop, then this matter would be over. But Miao Chun Mao still wanted to do it. If they did not do it, then wouldn't they just be watching others reap the benefits? So the rest of them gritted their teeth and prepared to continue. But this time, they had to be more careful, lest they were discovered by the Loyalty Manor Alliance. Anyway, the law did not punish the masses, and they were not the subordinates of the Loyalty Manor Alliance, but the Alliance. Even if they were discovered, there probably would not be any punishment. As a result, under Miao Chuanmao's instigation, almost half of the forces in the Morgue Village Alliance secretly invaded the territories in the north and had many conflicts with the local martial arts forces. However, they were all suppressed by their joint forces and did not spread to Nye Donglu. After all, the Loyalty Manor Alliance was now treating them as allies, so it was not easy to investigate, so as long as these people wanted to keep a low profile, it was not a problem for them to temporarily hide. But it was not a problem here. But the news had already spread to the fluttering snow city in the north. The far north Snowfall City stood in the center of the northern lands. It was a huge city that was thousands of feet tall, completely constructed from ice and snow. Its entire body was pure white and transparent, and only the words Snowfall City were written in bold blood-red letters on the city gates. The fluttering snow city in the north was the private city of the Bai family, and it was not open to the public. In the entire fluttering snow city, only the people of the Bai family and the servants belonged to the Bai family lived. Perhaps it was related to the local climate. In the fluttering snow city in the north, whether it was the Bai family or the other servants, they were extremely martial. Some of the younger generation warriors did not even need the elders to supervise their cultivation. They would fight and kill by themselves, and even when they were a little older, they would take the initiative to go to the northern wilderness to hunt all kinds of wild beasts. At this time, in the fluttering snow city in the north, in the city lord's mansion, a majestic and burly middle-aged man wearing a white tiger skin robe sat on the main seat. There were several warriors below him, crying about something. The middle-aged man's expression became more and more unsightly. Finally, the middle-aged man directly slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Loyalty Manor! You have gone too far." Chapter 5:18. The middle-aged man who slammed the table had a pair of azure blue eyes that were very magnificent and strange. This was a manifestation of the Bai clan's ice soul divine eyes that had been cultivated to the great success stage. In the entire drifting snow city of the Bai clan, there were only a few who had such a cultivation base. This man was the current city lord of the drifting snow city and also the clan leader of the Bai clan, Flaming Sun Frost, Bai Han Tian. At this time, the martial artist who was complaining to him was from some of the martial arts forces in the north. Under the instigation of Miao Chun Mao, the forces under the Morgue Village Alliance had invaded their territory and resources. The martial arts forces in the north were actually not too weak. It was just that the entire north was too sparsely populated. Therefore, the number of martial arts forces in the area was also very small. Moreover, the distance between the forces was too large. The closer they were to the periphery, the weaker they were. The drifting snow city of the far north did not have a subordinate relationship with these sections. However, the entire north was the territory of the drifting snow city of the far north. If it was a dispute between some small forces, it would be fine. However, this group of people came in the name of the Morgue Village. Wasn't this a provocation to the drifting snow city of the far north? However, the drifting snow city of the far north and the Morgue Village were both major forces in the northern Yen land. Once a war broke out, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, it was better for Bai Han Tian to be cautious. He comforted the people from the small forces. "Everyone, don't worry. The north is the sphere of influence of the drifting snow city of the far north. The Morgue Village has broken the rules here. I will naturally seek an explanation from them and give everyone justice." Hearing Bai Han Tian's words, the people present could only nod and leave. At this time, the door of the inner hall was pushed open. Bai Qinhu and Bai Wuji, the martial artists of the unity of heaven and man realm of the Bai clan, walked in together. Bai Wuji had not stepped into the martial arts world for a long time. However, at this time, he had already reached the Five Qis origin realm. Moreover, the arrogance from before had completely disappeared. His expression actually became a lot calmer. In the past, during the Divine Weapon Convention, Bai Wuji was severely injured by Shen Bai of the Azure Water Sword sect. That sword not only injured Bai Wuji's body, but also his state of mind. However, it was a blessing in disguise. Without that sword, Bai Wuji would have looked down on all the geniuses in the world. From then on, Bai Wuji began to work hard in closed-door seclusion. He no longer interacted with those scoundrel friends of his. Other than seclusion in the northern drifts now city, he would go to the northern wastelands to cultivate, tempering his body and will. This was why his cultivation base had advanced by leaps and bounds, and he had even broken through the 3 flowers as well as the 5 cheese collecting in Origin Realm. Father, what do those people from those powers want to do? Are you here to take advantage of me again? Bai Wuji didn't have a good impression of the major powers in the northern lands. In the past, these powers would often use the excuse of coming to the northern Drifts Now city to pay tribute to them. But in reality, these treasures had no value at all. As one of the major sects in the northern lands, the Drifts Now city naturally couldn't just accept the gifts and not return the gifts. Hence, it was always the Drifts Now city that was on the losing end. With regards to this point, the Drifts Now city of the extreme north didn't express anything. In any case, they were a big city and didn't care about such minor things. They only needed the absolute respect of these sects and powers. However, Bai Wuji's character was somewhat domineering. In his opinion, the Drifts Now city of the extreme north was powerful, so why should they be nice to those powers? If they were not convinced, they could just beat them until they were convinced. Bai Hantian shook his head with a gloomy face and said, "It has nothing to do with them. It's the morgue." As he spoke, Bai Hantian told the story to Bai Qinhu and Bai Wuji. Hearing this, Bai Wuji said coldly, "The morgue has been developing well these years. It seems that they are also very arrogant. How dare they try to wrestle with the Drifts Now city of the extreme north?" Although Bai Qinhu seemed to be impulsive and reckless, he was much calmer than Bai Wuji. Hearing this, Bai Qinhu said in a deep voice, "Master, this matter needs to be treated with caution. After all, it was only the forces of the Morgue Alliance that took action, but the Morgue did not do it themselves. Nie Renlong is shrewd and cunning. They are still pursuing the people of Qilian village. It doesn't seem like Nie Renlong would provoke the Drifts Now city of the extreme north at this time." Bai Wuji snorted coldly and said, "Whether it was Nie Renlong's idea or not, it was done by the people of the Morgue. If it wasn't for the Morgue supporting them, would these small forces dare to provoke the Drifts Now city of the extreme north?" Bai Hantian didn't reply. He just pondered with a gloomy face. At this moment, a servant suddenly came to report that someone wanted to see Bai Hantian. Bai Hantian frowned and said, "Who is that?" The servant hesitated for a moment and said, "That person claims to be from the Inma clan, and his strength is not weak." Of course, Bai Hantian, the city lord of the Drifts Now city of the extreme north, was not someone who could meet just anyone. If Chu Xiu wanted to meet Bai Hantian, under the premise that he could not use his own identity, the identity of the Inma clan was the most useful. Bai Hantian frowned and said, "The Inma clan." As the clan master of the Drifts Now city of the Drifts Now city, Bai Hantian naturally knew the difference between the Inma clan and the Bright Demon clan. But because of this, he was surprised that the Inma clan would look for him. In fact, the Drifts Now city of the extreme north was different from the Great Light Temple, which viewed the Demon clan as their mortal enemy. They could not be considered as a pure righteous clan. For the Drifts Now city of the extreme north, when dealing with a force, they would not first care whether the force was righteous or demonic. They would first see if the force had the strength to bring benefits to the Drifts Now city of the extreme north. Bai Hantian knew that the majority of the Inma clan members were extreme lunatics. He did not want to deal with the Inma clan. But now that they had taken the initiative to come to him, if he still refused to meet them, he would really offend them. "Bring him in," Bai Hantian said in a deep voice. After a while, Chu Xiu followed the people of the Bai clan into the main hall. He cupped his hands towards Bai Hantian and said, "Greetings, City Lord Bai." Bai Hantian's eyes shone with a brilliant blue light as he suddenly looked at Chu Xiu. But at the same time, Chu Xiu's mental demon rotation technique was displayed to the extreme. Combined with the power of the soul-shifting technique of extinguishing heaven and extinguishing earth, his powerful mental strength turned into a deep whirlpool, directly strangling the power of Bai Hantian's ice-soul divine eyes. The cultivation methods of the Drifts Now city of the extreme north were very strange. Their cultivation methods mainly focused on close combat, and their martial arts were violent and ferocious. But who would have imagined that the Bai clan's secret cultivation technique would actually contain a spiritual secret technique like the Ice-Soul Divine Eyes? This also caused many people to suspect that the Ice-Soul Divine Eyes wasn't a cultivation technique of the Bai clan at all, and they had obtained it from somewhere else. As there was only one mental secret technique, the Bai clan of the Drifting Snow City in the far north would naturally not treat it as their main cultivation technique. Therefore, when it came to the strength of mental energy, although Bai Hantian was a martial Dao grandmaster, he was still no match for the current Chu Xiu. Retracting his mental strength, Chu Xiu laughed in a hoarse voice and said, "The Ice Soul Divine Eyes really lives up to its name. But I'm still a guest. City Lord Bai, are you using the Ice Soul Divine Eyes to entertain your guests?" Bai Han Tian said coldly, "Although the Drift's now city of the extreme north is hospitable, guests must also abide by the rules. Wearing a mask, disguising your aura, and coming in secretly is not the way of a guest." Chu Xiu cupped his hands in obeisance and said, "City Lord Bai, please forgive me. It's just that my identity is sensitive and I don't want to expose it. If I were to remove my mask today, there would be no point in talking between us." Bai Hantian snorted coldly but did not say anything else. People of Bai Hantian's status were well aware of the affairs of the Yinma clan. He also knew that there were many members of the Yinma clan lying in ambush in the Jianghu. During the day, these people might be heroes of the righteous path or disciples of the major sects, but at night, they would become remnants of the diabolism. Many people in the Jianghu knew about these matters, but not many people would investigate wantonly because it was not worth it. The members of the Yinma clan were too well hidden. Even if they were to investigate wantonly, they might not be able to find them. If this group of people wanted to hide, then let them. After all, it would be difficult to achieve anything with their little tricks in the dark. As long as the diabolism did not produce another Dugu Weiwei, then this group of rats in the dark would not be able to stir up any waves. There was only one Dugu Weiwei in the Jianghu for thousands of years. How could there be another one so easily? The tides of the world were rising and falling. Now was not the time for this group of people from the diabolism to show their faces. Therefore Bai Hantian only snorted coldly and did not force Chu Xiu to reveal his true face. He asked coldly, "The Yinma clan and I mind our own business. Why are you looking for me?" Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "To tell you the truth, I am not actually representing the Yinma clan. I am here on behalf of the Qilian Stockade." There was a strange look in Bai Hantian's eyes as he said, "Qilian Stockade? The Qilian Stockade is actually colluding with the Yinma clan? If this is the case, you should leave as soon as possible. My northern fluttering snow city has a grudge with the Qilian Stockade. Moreover, the Qilian Stockade is about to be strangled by the Morgue village. What else is there to talk about?" In the past, the Northern Yen Imperial Court had united with the Northern Yen martial arts world to kill the Northern 36 bandits. Among them, the Northern Fluttering Snow City had contributed the most. Who asked the Northern Fluttering Snow City to be located in the Northern Lands? Therefore, strictly speaking, the Northern Fluttering Snow City and the Qilian Stockade also had a grudge. Chu Xiu said lightly, "The grudge is already in the past. Even the Qilian Stockade is no longer in their hearts. What are you so conflicted about, Governor Bai? And this time, I am not only here for the Qilian Stockade. The Morgue village is currently in the limelight. As far as I know, they are not only satisfied with occupying Liaodong County and destroying the Qilian Stockade. I am afraid that even the Northern Lands is their target." Bai Hantian squinted at Chu Xiu and said, "It seems that there are some things that you are aware of. That is why you are so eager to sow discord? However, there is no point in trying to sow discord. The ones who took action were the forces under the Morgue Village Alliance, not the Morgue Village itself. We are all from the Northern Yen sections. Why would the Northern Fluttering Snow City fight to the death with the Morgue Village over such a small matter? As long as the Morgue Village gives an explanation, this matter will be considered over. You are trying to sow discord between the Northern Fluttering Snow City and the Morgue Village. Do you think I am an idiot?" Chapter 519. Both the Morgue and the Northern Drifting Snow City belonged to the Northern Yen sects and the distance between them was not too far. Usually, there would be some friction between the Morgue and the Northern Drifting Snow City. However, this was very normal and the friction was not serious. Both sides had been restraining themselves. It was the same even now. Even if Bai Hantian was angry that the Morgue had crossed the line and caused trouble, he would not be provoked by Chu Xiu into fighting to the death with the Morgue. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "City Lord Bai, I'm not trying to sow discord. You want peace but the Morgue doesn't. The Northern Drifting Snow City has been around for thousands of years and it's past the time for crazy expansion. The most important thing is to protect their own foundation and then gradually expand." However, the Morgue had only been established for a few decades and Nie Rinlong wanted to lay a solid foundation for the Morgue before he died. To be more precise, the morgue needed to expand now. Believe me, this is not a misunderstanding. If you don't believe me, City Lord Bai, you can go and ask the people at the morgue and see if they're willing to hand over those who broke the rules to you. If the morgue really doesn't have such intentions, then City Lord Bai can just think that I'm trying to sow discord and kick me out at any time. However, if what I said is true, then I hope City Lord Bai can make preparations and nip the morgue's ambitions in the bud as soon as possible. At this time, if you and I join forces, the northern drifting snow city will not lose out. After saying that, Chu Xiu did not say anything else. He directly left his current residence to Bai Han Tian and turned to leave. He had no intention to sow discord. Behind him, Bai Han Tian's expression did not change. Although he would not be so easily provoked by Chu Xiu, he also did not understand the current situation in the morgue manner. Hence, Bai Han Tian decided to meet Nie Renlong to find out what he wanted. However, what Bai Han Tian did not know was that if he met Nie Renlong according to Chu Xiu's instructions, the two of them would most likely end up parting on bad terms. If it were not for Chu Xiu, Bai Han Tian would have sent someone of Bai Qinhu's level to negotiate with the morgue village instead of going there himself. But now, with Chu Xiu's words, Bai Han Tian couldn't help but want to take the initiative to take a look and see what the loyalty manor was up to. When two martial Dao grandmasters discussed these things together, they would either succeed or fail. Both of them were people who cared about their reputation. Once they met, there was no turning back. Moreover, Chu Xiu knew that the morgue would most likely not be able to come up with an explanation that Bai Han Tian wanted. Regardless of who was right or wrong, as long as Nie Renlong decided to take a step back in front of Bai Han Tian, his so-called morgue alliance would immediately become unstable. It was an alliance that had just been established a few days ago. Everyone could only fight battles that went well and only see benefits. Once they encountered a setback, the consequences would be dire. After Chu Xiu left, Bai Wuji snorted softly and said, "I think that the people from Diabolism are right. The morgue village should be suppressed, or else the Nie father and son would not even know their surnames." Ever since Nie Donglu became Han Baxian's disciple, he became more and more high-profile. The morgue village also began to show a strong aggressiveness. If we join forces with Pang Hu's Chilean village, we can really deal a heavy blow to the morgue village. Bai Wuji's relationship with Nie Donglu had never been good. Bai Wuji's ranking on the Longhu leaderboard was not as high as Nie Dongliu's. However, in the northern Yan region, Bai Wuji's reputation was not inferior to Nie Dongliu's. But after Bai Wuji was seriously injured by Shin Bai's sword, he went into closed-door training, while Nie Donglu became the disciple of the northern Yan martial artist, Han Baxian. So, the gap between their reputations was huge. Even in the northern Yan region, most people thought that Bai Wuji was not as good as Nie Donglu. Bai Wuji was seriously injured by Shen Bai last time. He was not as arrogant as before, but he still thought that he was not inferior to Nie Donglu. He was not as good as Shen Bai and Chu Xiu, who had crippled Shen Bai. How could he not be better than Nie Donglu, who only knew how to plot in the dark? Bai Han Tian waved his hand and said, "Wuji, sometimes you are too impulsive. There are times when it is necessary to be radical, and times when it is necessary to be cautious. Now is not the time to be radical. I will personally go to the morgue village to discuss this matter with Nie Renlong. Nie Renlong is not an idiot. I believe he will give me an explanation." Hearing Bai Han Tian's words, Bai Wuji and Bai Qinhu did not speak. Bai Han Tian had been in charge of the northern floating snow city for so many years. He naturally had his own plans. Liaodong County, in a large mansion in a small town near the northern lands. This place was originally the temporary hiding place of the Chilean stockade, but it was recently discovered by the morgue village. After the morgue village killed the remnants of the Chilean stockade, this place became the morgue village's temporary residence. At this time, in the attic of the mansion, Nie Renlong was sitting by the window, wearing a white fox fur coat. There was a pot of tea on the table, enjoying the snowy scenery outside. Nie Renlong entered the Jianghu when he was in his teens, experiencing the dangers of the Jianghu, scheming and killing. It took him half his life to build the morgue village. Along the way, there had been people who had betrayed Nie Renlong. Of course, Nie Renlong had also betrayed others. Gratitude and resentment, right and wrong, had long been unclear. That young hero, Nie Renlong, who had sworn to uphold justice in the righteous village, had long since died. The only one who was alive now was the scheming village chief of the righteous village. Staring at the falling snowflakes outside the window, Nie Renlong held the teacup in his hand but did not drink. He did not know how long it had been since he was so free. This time, Nie Renlong only controlled the overall situation of the battle against the Northern Land's 36 bandits. Some of the details were all handled by Nie Donglu. Although Nie Renlong was not old, he was not young either. Therefore, he had to let Nie Donglu completely control the Morgue village while he was still alive. He had to have enough prestige in the Jianghu, so that the Morgue village could really take root in the northern Yan and continue to exist for thousands of years. Fortunately, his son was good enough. At least for now, it seemed that Nie Donglu had done well enough, even beyond his imagination. At present, the young talents in the Jianghu, whether it was Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian or Feng Qishao, all relied on their own talent to reach the stage. Only Chu Xiu could be considered to have risen from the wilderness. Nie Donglu did not have such talent, but Nie Renlong did not care. In his opinion, some things were 70% man and 30% God. If he did not fight, even if he had 30% God's will, he would still be frustrated. Nie Renlong thought that when he was young, he was also a penniless, stupid boy from the wilderness. Now, did he not become the leader of the Morgue village of the 6 gangs? Nie Donglio's starting point was much higher than his. His son's future achievements should also be higher than his. At this moment, there was a sound of people coming upstairs. Nie Donglio's expression was a little gloomy. Just as he sat in front of Nie Renlong and was about to say something, Nie Renlong waved his hand and poured a cup of tea for Nie Donglu. In a deep voice he said, "Don't panic. Every time something big happens, you have to be calm. The sky has not fallen, so why panic? Drink a cup of tea and speak slowly. Remember, if you are in charge of the Morgue village in the future, do not show this expression in front of anyone. Hide your joy and anger in your heart and not show it on your face." Nie Donglu nodded and finished his tea. Then he said coldly, "Father, those people really need to be punished. I've already told them not to cross the border and go to the northern lands, but they're still doing it in secret. They really deserve to be killed." Nie Renlong also frowned and stroked his beard. "It's a bit difficult. Benefits are at the front. Not to mention you, even if it was me, these people might not listen. The alliance has just been formed, and it was my Morgue village who invited them to join. These people are a bit arrogant because they are spoiled. However, this matter cannot be done forcefully. If they are my subordinates, you can kill 1 or 2 of them as a warning to others. But these people are not my subordinates yet. Don't talk about killing them. If you take a hard stance, it will cause people's hearts to waver. For now, send people to keep an eye on them and find a chance to make some noise to warn them. Don't let them go too far." Nie Donglu nodded. Just now when he said these people should be killed, he was actually just saying it out of anger. He also knew that this group of people could not be killed now. Just as Nie Donglu was about to say something, a heroic voice suddenly rang out. "Brother Nie, since you are in Liaodong, why don't you come to my northern fluttering snow city as a guest? Are you looking down on me?" As the voice fell, a figure wearing a white tiger skin cloak leaped up to the 2nd floor. He was tall and sturdy, with azure blue eyes. It was Bai Hantian. Seeing Bai Hantian come, Nie Renlong and Nie Donglu cursed at the same time. They guessed that he was here for this matter. However, Nie Renlong's expression did not change. He still smiled and said, "Brother Bai, please don't be offended. My Morgue village has been too busy recently, so I can't find the time. When I have time, I will definitely pay a visit to the northern fluttering snow city." Bai Hantian's smile disappeared. "Too many things? I know that you are busy invading my territory in the northern lands, right?" Nie Renlong smiled bitterly. "Brother Bai, you misunderstood. These things were caused by some of the forces under the Morgue village alliance. I was just talking to Donglu about this matter. I will find a chance to restrain them." Seeing that Nie Renlong did not hide anything, Bai Hantian's expression became a little better. He nodded and said, "Since Brother Nie has said so, then I will not pursue this matter any further. Hand over the people in your alliance so that I can go back and answer to the martial arts forces in the northern lands. This matter will be over." However, when Nie Renlong heard this, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 520. Nie Renlong was actually someone who followed the rules of the pugilistic world. It was precisely because he liked to scheme that he followed the rules. People who didn't follow the rules usually didn't need to scheme. Just like Chen Qingdi, if he was unhappy with something, he could just throw a punch. This time, the people from the morgue had crossed the line. Logically speaking, he should be the one to hand them over and punish them. But this time, he couldn't. Previously, Nie Renlong told Nie Donglu not to make a big deal out of this. The morgue alliance was still very fragile. If something went wrong, it would fall apart. Nie Renlong knew very well why this group of people joined the righteous manner. After the alliance stabilized, Nie Renlong could do whatever he wanted to them. By then, they wouldn't be able to leave the morgue alliance. But now, no matter how big a mistake they made, Nie Renlong had to protect them. At this moment, Bai Hantian saw Nie Renlong's expression and recalled what Chu Xiao had said before. The smile on Bai Hantian's face gradually disappeared. He coldly said, "Why, Manor Lord Nie doesn't intend to hand them over? You don't intend to give an explanation to my drifting snow city?" Hearing Bai Hantian address him as Manor Lord Nie instead of Brother Nie, Nie Renlong hurriedly said, "Brother Bai, that's not what I meant. This is just a misunderstanding. They are all members of my alliance. If I were to hand them over now, where would the prestige of the alliance go? So, my morgue is willing to compensate you in other ways. As long as Brother Bai is satisfied, it's fine." Bai Hantian coldly snorted and said, "Your morgue wants prestige, but my drifting snow city doesn't? Cut the crap. I don't want anything else from your morgue. I only want those people who acted recklessly. Are you going to hand them over or not?" Nie Renlong frowned. Based on his understanding of Bai Hantian, he shouldn't be so overbearing. But now, Nie Renlong could only be a little more forceful and said, "Brother Bai, it's not that I don't want to hand them over, but I can't. How about this? After I'm done here, I will personally bring the items to your drifting snow city to apologize. What do you think?" On the other side, Bai Hantian was also frowning. The more Nie Renlong refused to hand over the man, the more suspicious he became. Based on Nie Renlong's personality, he should not have refused such a request. But now, Nie Renlong's attitude was unyielding. This was clearly not in line with Nie Renlong's usual style. This made Bai Hantian suspicious. Could it be that the morgue was really going to make a move against the northern lands? Bai Hantian snorted coldly and said, "Good, good, good. Villa Master Nie is indeed loyal. However, even if you are loyal to the members of your Loyalty Villa Alliance, the Northern Fluttering Snow City must also be responsible for the martial arts forces of the Northern Lands. This matter is not over." After saying that, Bai Hantian's body moved and in an instant, he had already leaped out of the loft, disappearing into the snowstorm. Nie Renlong sighed. I wonder what kind of medicine Bai Hantian ate. His attitude is actually so impulsive. This time around, we have offended the Drifts Now city of the extreme north. Nie Donglu said in a deep voice. Then father, should we be more vigilant against the Drifts Now city of the extreme north? Nie Renlong waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. For such a small matter, the Drifts Now city of the extreme north will not take action. We are not attacking the disciples of the Drifts Now city. But looking at Bai Hantian's attitude, I am afraid he will come looking for trouble. It is better to be more careful than not." Nie Donglu nodded, but he still felt that something was not right. It should be said that after the people of Qilian Stockade retreated, he felt that something was wrong. It was as if someone was manipulating everything. It was a very strange feeling, and Nie Donglu could not find any evidence. This was only his own feeling. Under the premise that there was no evidence, Nie Donglu did not dare to speak recklessly. Now, Nie Donglu could only hope that his feeling was wrong, that he had been too busy recently and that it was an illusion. After returning to the Drifts Now city of the extreme north, Bai Hantian's face was gloomy. Bai Wuji saw that Bai Hantian's expression was a little strange. He hurriedly asked, "Father, is the morgue village not willing to hand over the person?" Bai Hantian nodded and said, "That demonic brat was right. The morgue's attitude is a little strange. Even if the morgue doesn't want to attack the northern lands this time, I'm afraid they have other plans." Bai Wuji heard this and said coldly, "Then father, what are you waiting for? If people don't offend us, we won't offend them. Since the morgue village dares to cause trouble in our northern lands, then the Drifts now city of the extreme north, will let them see who is the king of the northern lands. A force that has been rooted in a land for a long time, this in itself represented a kind of foundation and strength. The full name of the Drifts now city was Drifts now city. The reason why the outside world called it the Drifts now city of the extreme north was because of the foundation that the Drifts now city had been rooted in the northern lands for thousands of years. The Drifts now city represented the northern lands, and the northern lands represented the Drifts now city. Therefore, forces like the Drifts now city of the extreme north were very sensitive to their own territory. You can come if you want, but you have to inform them beforehand. If you break the rules and cross the line, the enmity between the two sides would be formed. Bai Han Tian said solemnly, "Don't be in a hurry. Go find that kid from the Hidden Devil clan. I want to see what he wants to cooperate with us. Also, Wuji, can you be a little calmer? After being in seclusion for such a long time, haven't you tempered your temperament?" Bai Wuji lowered his head and didn't speak. Previously, after being injured by Shen Bai's sword, Bai Wuji's character was less arrogant, but he was more radical in handling matters. Just like this time, if Bai Wuji was in charge of this matter, and the Morgue village dared to provoke the Drifts now city of the extreme north, he could just directly take action. Perhaps Shen Bai's sword strike had left a very deep impression on him. Now Bai Wuji's way of doing things was very simple and direct. He loved to use strength to solve all problems. Chu Xiu did not go far, but stayed directly outside the Drifts now city of the extreme north. When he saw Bai Han Tian again, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Seems like City Lord Bai, you still haven't gotten the person. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here again." Bai Han Tian stared at Chu Xiu, his eyes emitting a blue glow. He said slowly, "I didn't get the person, but why do I feel that something is wrong? The ones who benefit in the end are the people from your Qilian stockade. Are you the one who instigated this?" As the city lord of the Drifts now city of the extreme north, Bai Han Tian was certainly not an idiot. Although he had no evidence, from Bai Han Tian's point of view, the ones who would benefit in the end would definitely be the people from Qilian stockade. It was originally a battle between the Morgue village and the Qilian stockade, but in the end, the Drifts now city of the extreme north was the innocent party involved. Bai Han Tian felt that something was amiss. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "City Lord Bai, I'm not the one who instigated this. Even if I denied it, you wouldn't believe me. Even if you insist on it, you have no evidence. But look at the Morgue village's route of action and you'll know. The Morgue village wants to expand, not to the west or south, but to the north. They say that their target is only the Qilian stockade, and that they only want to kill the remaining bandits. Do you believe that?" Bai Han Tian remained silent. He and Nie Renlong had known each other for more than 20 years. He knew very well that the owner of the Morgue village, Nie, was a person who would not do anything unless it was for his own benefit. Everything he did was either for his own benefit or for his reputation. The Morgue village would not be so kind as to help the imperial court eradicate the remaining bandits. Chu Xiu continued, "So, even if you, City Lord Bai, chose not to do anything in this matter and chose to bear with it, once the Morgue village has completely stabilized its power in Liaodong and become neighbors with the Drifts now city of the extreme north, can you guarantee that there won't be any conflicts? How can you allow others to snore next to your bed?" The Great Light Temple can be neighbors with the Drifts now city of the extreme north because the difference between the two is huge. But the difference between the Drifts now city of the extreme north and the Morgue village is not that huge. Chu Xiu's previous provocation and threats did not move the Drifts now city of the extreme north. But his words, "How can you allow others to snore next to your bed?" made Bai Han Tian's heart tremble. In the past, the Drifts now city of the extreme north was in a very comfortable geographical location. As the neighbor of the Drifts now city of the extreme north, the Great Light Temple's power was too strong. It was so strong that it was not on the same level as the Drifts now city of the extreme north. It was impossible for the Drifts now city of the extreme north to feel threatened. Although the extreme evil sect of the Northern Plains was a demonic sect, they kept a very low profile and did not have any conflicts with the Drifts now city of the extreme north. The Liaodong County in the east did not have any forces that could make a move. The Qilian stockade could only be considered half of it. The bandits' foundation was too shallow and could not be considered a force at all. So all these years, the Drifts now city of the extreme north had never worried about any external problems. But if the Congregation Manor became neighbors with the Drifts now city of the extreme north, Nieren Long was not the kind of person who would submit to others. When the time came, the result of the conflict between the two sides could be imagined. Chu Xiu looked at Bai Han Tian and said faintly, "City Lord Bai, I have a habit. I always like to nip danger in the bud. It's simple and saves effort. Sometimes, I would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. I think this is a very good habit. What do you think, City Lord Bai?" Bai Han Tian was silent for a moment and finally said, "I want to meet with Pang Hu." There was no expression on Chu Xiu's masked face. But under the mask, a smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. Of course. Even if Chu Xiu represented the hidden devil clan, he was still a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm. Bai Han Tian would not be at ease to discuss such an important matter with Chu Xiu. Only Pang Hu had the right to speak to him on equal terms. Now that Bai Han Tian was ready to meet with Pang Hu, it proved that the matter had been settled. Although the two of them had agreed to meet in the north, it was not in the Drifts Now city of the extreme north. Pang Hu did not trust Bai Han Tian. But when Bai Han Tian and Pang Hu met again, both of them sighed. Who would have thought that the two of them, who had fought to the death in the past, would one day join forces? Chapter 521. Bai Han Tian and Pang Hu had known each other for a long time. They had even fought against each other several times. At that time, most of the martial arts forces in the northern Yen had joined forces to kill the 36 northern bandits. The northern floating snow city was one of the main forces, so the two of them were no strangers. However, when they met again, Pang Hu no longer felt any hostility towards Bai Han Tian. One of the reasons was that the imperial court was the one who took the lead in wiping out the 36 northern lands bandits. The second reason was that Pang Hu had also thought it through. The 36 northern lands bandits had been too high profile. If he was in the position of any other northern Yen sect, he would not be able to hold back and take action. However, although Pang Hu could ignore the enmity, it did not mean that he would be nice to Bai Han Tian. When he saw Bai Han Tian, Pang Hu could not help but sneer. "Bai Han Tian, weren't you clamoring to kill us bandits and roving bandits? Why, are you in a hurry to cooperate now?" Bai Han Tian also sneered. "It's your Chilean village that's in a hurry to cooperate, okay? Don't you know who it was that was almost exterminated by the righteous manner?" Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel again, Chu Xiu quickly said, "Calm down, both of you. Since we want to join forces, let's put aside our previous grievances. Otherwise, it will be embarrassing if we start fighting before we even see the enemy." Bai Han Tian and Pang Hu snorted at the same time. Pang Hu pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "My Chilean village will be under Master Lin Ye's command. You can talk to Master Lin directly." Hearing Pang Hu's words, Bai Han Tian was a little surprised. He did not expect that everything in Chilean village would be under the command of this demonic brat. He had originally thought that this brat was just a lobbyist. However, at this moment, Bai Han Tian suddenly remembered something. He suddenly looked at Chu Xiu and said, "You're Lin Yi, the Lin Yi from the Yinma clan, the one who killed Xiahou Wujiang from the Xiahou clan?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes." Pang Hu asked curiously, "Is Master Lin very famous in Jianghu?" Bai Han Tian looked at Pang Hu speechlessly. Was this guy really stupid or was he just pretending? The person he invited had handed over the authority to command Chilean village. In the end, Pang Hu's understanding of Lin Yi was not even as good as his. Was this guy a joke? Actually, Pang Hu really did not know about these. After all, Chilean Stockade Village was just a bandit organization. They did not have that much information. Of course, they would not be able to find out some secrets about diabolism. In any case, he only knew that Lin Yi was sent by Mei Qinglian, and that Mei Qinglian would not harm him. Pang Hu only needed to know this point, and that was enough. As for Bai Han Tian, as the city lord of the Northern Drifts Now city, although he didn't participate in the previous great war between the righteous and demonic sects on floating Jade Mountain, news of the resurgence of the demonic path had spread throughout the pugilistic world. Lin Ye's identity had also entered the eyes of many righteous sections. Yinma clan's clan leader, Yinma sect and Faceless Demon sect are very fond of you. Even the Yinma clan's clan leader, Jade-faced demon Wei Shuya, thinks highly of you. The Yinma clan's clan leader, Yinma sect and Faceless Demon sect are very fond of you. Even the Yinma clan's clan leader, Jade-faced demon Wei Shuya, thinks highly of you. During the Yinma clan leader, You easily killed the Xiahou clan's most outstanding disciple, Xiahou Wujiang. I'm afraid your strength is enough to rank in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Pang Hu looked at Bai Hantian and did not say anything. Mei Qinglian had said that Lin Ye's strength was enough to rank in the top 5 of the Longhu leaderboard. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "It's just a title. Governor Bai, you don't have to praise me. Compared to you, I'm still a junior." Bai Hantian did not say anything. If the information was correct, this was a young talent that the Yinma clan had focused on grooming. Although he was a junior now, after a period of time, he might be on the same level as him. Bai Hantian waved his hand and said, "Since Qilian village has entrusted everything to you, young Master Lin, then please tell us your plan." Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "With Governor Bai's participation, my plan is actually very simple. It's nothing more than luring the enemy and killing them. However, Nie Renlong and his son are cautious people. For luring the enemy, we need to add a heavy bait. I'll have to trouble you to be the bait, Chief Pang. The people from the Village of Honor know that Chief Pang is the leader of the Qilian village. That's why the Village of Honor wants to kill you the most. The last time you fought with the Stone General, Han Baxian, you suffered some injuries. Although your injuries have healed, you should find a chance to pretend that your injuries have not healed. You can recuperate somewhere and lure the Village of Honor to go all out. We only need to lie in ambush nearby." Bai Hantian frowned. Anyone could think of such a simple trick. However, the key question was, would the Village of Honor fall for it? Whether it was Nie Renlong or Nie Donglu, both of them were shrewd people. They wouldn't be fooled so easily. Seeing through Bai Hantian's thoughts, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Governor Bai, don't worry. I have people at the Village of Honor." Bai Hantian's heart skipped a beat when he heard Chu Xiu's words. They were obviously on the weaker side. Yet this guy had planted an undercover agent at the Village of Honor? At this time, Bai Hantian also suspected that the Village of Honor had invaded the north. Was it also the work of the undercover agent? However, this thought only appeared in Bai Hantian's mind for a moment before it was thrown to the back of his mind. There was no point in thinking about it now because Bai Hantian had already appeared here. Moreover, the real reason why Bai Hantian decided to take action was the threat of the Village of Honor. Even if the Village of Honor did not invade the north, if the Village of Honor became the neighbor of the drifting snow city in the far north, Bai Hantian could not guarantee that Nie Renlong would develop in peace. Just as Lin Yi had said, it was the simplest and most direct way to kill the danger before it happened. A few days later, in the temporary stronghold of the Village of Honor, Nie Donglu once again heard about the Alliance's men disobeying orders and heading to the north without permission. This group of people had committed the same offense again and again. Nie Donglu had reached the limit of his tolerance. So he went to Nie Renlong and said angrily, "Father, we should deal with this group of people seriously. If this goes on, where are the rules of the Alliance?" Nie Renlong's expression was also gloomy as he nodded and said, "We can't go on like this. Go and find those people." When Nie Renlong had found Miao Chunmao and the others, before he could reprimand them, Miao Chunmao said excitedly, "Villa Master, we found traces of Pang Hu. Most of the Qilian village's survivors are there." Nie Renlong was stunned when he heard this. He hurriedly asked, "Is what you said true?" Miao Chunmao hurriedly said, "Of course it's true. No wonder we haven't found any traces of the Qilian village's survivors after such a long time. It turns out that they're hiding in the north. Besides, when Senior Han fought with Pang Hu last time, Pang Hu was seriously injured. Pang Hu is in the north collecting some rare spiritual medicine to heal his injuries. No wonder the Qilian village retreated in such a hurry. It turns out that Pang Hu has not recovered from his injuries. Villa Master, take this opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop." Nie Renlong nodded. No wonder Pang Hu retreated. It turned out that Pang Hu's injuries were not light. However, Pang Hu was actually in the north. This was a little tricky. Not long ago, Bai Hantian had just come to find him. If he were to go to the north again and bring so many people with him, it would inevitably cause some misunderstandings. Nie Donglu also said, "Father, let's handle this carefully first. Send someone to keep an eye on them. Wait until we understand their strength before we make a move." Hearing Nie Donglio's words, Miao Chunmao became anxious. Lin Yi had asked him to lead the people from the memorial hall to the ambush position. As long as he succeeded, he and the Miao family would be fine. However, Lin Yi had not taught him how to do it in detail. He had to rely on himself. If he failed this mission, then his hiding during this period would be in vain. The Miao family would also be in danger. Miao Chun Mao suddenly had an idea. He suddenly said, "Villa Master, we can't wait any longer. When we came back, we left a few warriors behind to guard the place. However, I neglected that the people left behind to guard the place are too weak. They might be discovered by Pang Hu at any time. If they didn't keep their mouths shut and leaked the news, Pang Hu and the others would have already moved." Nie Renlong frowned and said, "Since you know that they are from Chilean village, why didn't you send some warriors with enough strength to guard there?" Miao Chun Mao put on an ashamed expression and said, "I didn't think it through. When we came back, I realized that I did something wrong." Nie Renlong frowned and said, "If that's the case, then immediately gather people and prepare to make a move. Oh right, Dong Lu, go and invite Brother Han here. This time, I'll have to trouble Brother Han to make another move. Even though that Pang Hu is still heavily injured, it's still better for us to be a little more cautious." Nie Dong Lu nodded and went to invite Han Baxian over. In all fairness, his master treated him very well. When the memorial hall invited him, Han Baxian did not hesitate and immediately came to help. However, Nie Dong Lu did not know why there was still a haze in his heart. It made him feel a little uneasy. At this time, outside the small northern city of Shuilian City, the memorial hall and dozens of warriors from the Alliance had all arrived and surrounded the entire city. Shuilian City was very small. It was just an ordinary dirt city, the kind where you could see from the south to the north at a glance. The Morgue Village Alliance had only sent out less than 10,000 people. However, these 10,000 people were the elites of the Morgue Village and the Alliance. The weakest among them was in the innate realm. It was very easy for them to kill the people from Chilean Village. At this time, beside Nie Renlong stood a tall burly middle-aged man in black armor. The burly middle-aged man's aura was vigorous and violent. His power was even stronger than Nie Renlong's. This person was Nie Donglio's master, the Northern Yen martial artist, Stone General Han Baxian. Chapter 522. The fact that the Stone General Han Baxian had accepted Nie Dong Lu as a disciple had once surprised all the warriors in the Northern Yen region. That was because Han Baxian and Nie Dong Lu were obviously two different people. How could such people become master and disciple? In fact, Han Baxian did not have such complicated reasons for accepting Nie Dong Lu as a disciple. Han Baxian had entered the imperial court before venturing out into the world. He was simple and direct, but he had also been tricked countless times. That was why he was looking for a successor this time. He wanted someone with a more flexible mind, someone who would not be easily tricked by others. Nie Dong Lu was talented and smart, which suited Han Baxian's requirements very well. Of course, there were countless people in the world who met these two requirements. Nie Dong Lu was chosen by Han Baxian as a disciple because of another special characteristic of him, which was his refusal to admit defeat. In the eyes of Nie Donglio's enemies like Chu Xiao, Nie Dong Lu was too calculative and somewhat disgusting. He did not even have much of a warrior's spirit. However, it was undeniable that Nie Donglio's will was extremely tough. He had been defeated countless times in his life, and he had suffered a few losses at the hands of Chu Xiao. In the end, Nie Dong Lu did not feel the slightest bit discouraged and was able to stand up again. He was not like Lin Kaiyun of Sword King City, who had been completely crippled after being defeated once. Nie Donglio's characteristics were very similar to Han Baxian's. In his early years, Han Baxian did not rely on his talent to conquer the world. He had also suffered defeat after defeat to achieve his current status. Nie Dong Lu was able to become Han Baxian's disciple mainly because of this. At that moment, Han Baxian rubbed his fist and said, "What are you waiting for? Let's just directly make a move. I actually want to exchange blows with that Pang Hu again. I was still in the Northern Yen army when we were annihilating the 36 northern bandits. However, I didn't have the chance to take action at that time. I didn't expect that Pang Hu, who wasn't that famous among the 36 northern bandits, would actually be so powerful. He escaped last time when I was caught off guard. This time, he won't be able to slip away so easily." The last time Han Baxian fought Pang Hu, it could be said that both of them were caught off guard. Pang Hu did not expect Han Baxian to make a move, nor did Han Baxian expect Pang Hu to be so strong. However, Pang Hu had stirred up Han Boxian's fighting spirit. He couldn't wait to strike again. Nie Donglu frowned but did not notice anything amiss. He looked at Nie Renlong and waited for Nie Renlong to nod. Nie Donglu then said in a deep voice, "Let's do it. Hide your breath and don't let the people from Qilian village discover us. This time, we will not let a single person from Qilian village go." Everyone present nodded and stealthily headed in the direction Miao Chun Mao pointed. The place that Miao Chun Mao was pointing at was a huge mansion in Shuilian City. It was big enough to accommodate hundreds of people. The elites of Qilian Stockade Village were lying in ambush here, keeping a low profile and recuperating. However, when everyone was about to hide in front of the mansion, Nie Renlong stopped in his tracks, and his expression suddenly became extremely ugly. Nie Donglu was stunned at first, but then his expression changed as well. He also felt that something was amiss. The long street around the mansion was very quiet, extremely quiet. The surroundings were empty, and there was not even a single pedestrian. It was very strange. Of course, this could also be understood as Qilian village buying the entire street to ensure their concealment, to prevent outsiders from recognizing them. However, in reality, this behavior was even more deceptive. Buying an entire street to hide because they had nothing better to do. Was there anything more obvious and idiotic than this? The people from Qilian village were not idiots. They would not do such an idiotic thing. Hence, the only explanation was that there was something wrong. Whether it was Nie Renlong or Nie Donglu, they all subconsciously looked at Miao Chun Mao because he was the first to discover this place. However, at this moment, they realized that Miao Chun Mao, who had always been very active, was now very low-key. He was actually walking at the back of the group. Nie Renlong and Nie Donglio's expressions darkened. Both of them were about to order everyone to retreat, but at this moment, the long street shone with the light of an icy blue formation. Countless chi of heaven and earth condensed, turning into spear-like icicles that pierced towards the people from the Morgue Village Alliance. "Ambush! Be careful!" Nie Renlong roared, but it was already too late. The icicles were like spears, piercing through almost 30% of the warriors present in an instant. Under the blessing of the formation, the inside of the icicles not only became extremely sharp, but also had the effect of tearing vital energy apart. A moment of carelessness and being killed was a very common thing. The moment the formation was activated, a dense crowd of warriors emerged from the surroundings of the long street and attacked the people from the Morgue Village. Pang Hu held a huge scarlet spear in his hand and brought it down on Han Boxian's head. Its power was like a mountain shattering. The scarlet-red gang energy brought with it a scorching aura. When the spear fell, it actually had a bit of the charm of a falling meteorite. Golden gang energy condensed around Han Boxian. As he put his palms together to form a seal, it was like a giant hammer that smashed down, causing the chi of heaven and earth to explode. Both sides attacked with all their might. The gang energy dissipated and they were evenly matched. The moment Pang Hu made his move, Bai Han Tian also made his move. Bai Han Tian did not use any weapons, but as his palms fell one after another, snowflakes fell from the sky. The dense snowflakes were like the edge of a sword, tearing apart one's gang energy and weakening one's chi and blood. It was very mystical. Heaven and earth revolved in Nie Renlong's hands. Under his control, the power of heaven and earth blocked the snowflakes. Looking at Bai Han Tian, Nie Renlong bellowed, "Bai Han Tian, are you crazy? How dare you join forces with the Qilian bandits to attack my morgue?" In fact, the moment the formation appeared, Nie Renlong had already suspected that it was the drifting snow city of the far north. This was because the formation was the signature formation of the drifting snow city of the far north, the ice-killing formation. However, Nie Renlong still could not understand. If it was because of what happened before, the drifting snow city of the far north should have no reason to attack his morgue. It was because it was not worth it. In the end, Nie Renlong had guessed wrong. Not only did the drifting snow city of the far north make their move, but they also made their move to take his life. Bai Han Tian said expressionlessly, "It's because I'm not crazy that I made my move. Nie Renlong, if you had stayed in your east of Yen province and developed your morgue, I wouldn't have bothered to go against you. But this time, you invaded my north. For this matter, I have to give an explanation to those sects in the north." Although the drifting snow city of the far north made their move because they were afraid of the expansion of the morgue, they could not say so on the surface. Secretly, the drifting snow city of the far north was for their own benefit. But on the surface, the drifting snow city of the far north was seeking justice for the forces under them. For something like building a reputation, it wasn't just limited to the morgue. The drifting snow city of the far north also knew how to do it. Nie Renlong frowned as he blocked the attack. He did not believe Bai Hantian's nonsense. The drifting snow city of the far north was not so magnanimous that they would go against the morgue for the sake of the martial arts forces in their territory. Most importantly, Nie Renlong could not understand how the drifting snow city of the far north had colluded with Pang Hu. One must know that there was no connection between the two, and they even had enmity before. Nie Renlong's heaven and earth cloud hand was unleashed to the extreme. It was not that he was no match for Bai Hantian, but Nie Renlong's mental strength was focused on other parts of the battlefield. The drifting snow city of the far north and the Qilian stockade's strength, the Morgue alliance was already at a disadvantage. Not to mention that they had been ambushed by the formation and lost a large number of their men. Now, Nie Renlong no longer had to think about killing the Qilian stockade. He should be thinking about how to escape. Bai Hantian, is the drifting snow city of the far north really going to fight to the death with my morgue? Nie Renlong shouted angrily in a low voice. Bai Hantian shook his head indifferently and said, "Of course not. Even if I did, I wouldn't be able to kill you, and I wouldn't be able to destroy your loyalty manor. However, it won't be that easy for you to leave." If Bai Hantian could destroy the morgue, he wouldn't mind being ruthless. However, if he really wanted to fight to the death with Nie Renlong now, it was still unknown if he could do it. The drifting snow city of the far north would also suffer some losses. Therefore, the safest thing now was to inflict heavy damage to the morgue, so that within a decade or even a few decades, the morgue would not dare to have any thoughts of invading the north. Nie Renlong let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "Bai Hantian, I admit defeat this time. However, I want to know, who was the one who defeated me this time?" Ever since the Qilian stockade suddenly retreated, something was not right. There was definitely someone secretly plotting this. Who was it? This kind of plotting in the dark is not your style. Pang Hu is a boorish man. He doesn't have the brains to do this. Who was it that schemed against my morgue? The person who schemed against the morgue's people had a simple method, but they had exploited the biggest loophole of the morgue, which was the fragility of the alliance. The drifting snow city of the far north was obviously roped in by someone. However, there was no such person in the Qilian stockade previously. Otherwise, the Qilian stockade would not have sat back and watched as the morgue's alliance killed several of their stockades. A strange look flashed in Bai Hantian's eyes. Although he was now working together with the Qilian stockade, he did not have a good impression of Pang Hu. Therefore, when Nie Renlong asked, Bai Hantian shifted his gaze to the other side and chuckled. "It's that person, the Yinma clan's Devil Path's outstanding talent, Lin Yi. You should have heard of his name." This time, Pang Hu had asked the Yinma clan for help, and the Yinma clan had sent this person. The person who has been fighting with your morgue has not been the Qilian stockade, but this person. Bai Hantian only planned to inflict heavy damage on the morgue's morgue and kill their ambition. As for the rest, he did not care. On the contrary, Bai Hantian was happy to see the morgue's alliance and the Qilian stockade both suffer. Chapter 523. These damned devil cultivators. Nie Renlong looked at Chu Xiao, who was dressed in black and wearing a mask. If Bai Hantian had not stopped him, he would have torn Chu Xiao apart. Only God knew how Pang Hu had colluded with these devil cultivators. If he had known earlier that there was someone else involved, Nie Renlong would have been 100 times more careful. It was because the enemy was in the dark while they were in the light that they had been tricked so badly. At this time, Chu Xiao didn't care about Nie Renlong's gaze. He was staring at Nie Donglu. In fact, Chu Xiao had wanted to attack Nie Donglu from the beginning. But someone else had beaten him to it. That person was Bai Wuji. Previously, when Bai Wuji and Nie Donglu were both in the innate realm, they had fought a few times. But Bai Wuji didn't have the upper hand. This time, Bai Wuji had been silent for a long time. He didn't think he was any weaker than Nie Donglu. Seeing Bai Wuji rushing towards him with his spear, Nie Donglu said coldly, "Your northern floating snow city played a good trick. You actually joined forces with the Qilian village bandits to attack my memorial village. This time, my memorial village suffered a loss because of a moment of carelessness. We will settle this score in the future." Bai Wuji sneered, "Nie Donglu, why are you talking so much nonsense? Do you still think there will be a future? It's still unknown whether you can leave here alive today." As his voice fell, the spear in Bai Wuji's hand smashed down with a piercing cold wind. The icy chi was bone-chilling, but it was majestic. Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand was unleashed. With the heaven and earth in his hand, countless strands of astral energy spiraled down like silk threads. Bai Wuji's powerful spear strike was frozen in the air, unable to move even an inch. Bai Wuji's expression changed. How could Nie Donglio's strength be so great? But before Bai Wuji could recover from his shock, Nie Donglio's hands bloomed with dazzling golden chi. He grabbed Bai Wuji's spear with both hands, and a burst of golden astral energy burst out. He swung the spear and sent Bai Wuji flying. Furthermore, Nie Donglu did not stop at all. His fist landed like a blazing sun, ferocious and domineering. This wasn't a technique from the morgue, but Han Baxian's vast Yang9 Extreme's mysterious art. Bai Wuji's eyes shone with a frosty light. He used the Frost Soul Divine Eyes, which went straight for Nie Donglio's head, trying to freeze his nascent soul. However, Nie Donglu was protected by vast Yang energy. Before the Ice Soul Divine Gaze could fully display its power, it was already neutralized by Nie Donglio's vast Yang energy. In terms of power, Han Baxian's vast Yang9 Extreme's mystic art couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's Nine Heavens Fiend golden body. In fact, it couldn't even compare to the great Vajra strength. However, the only advantage of the vast Yang9 Extreme's mysterious art was that it was comprehensive. There was almost no obvious weakness to be found. Nie Donglio's fist came down with unparalleled power, sending Bai Wuji flying and smashing through the surrounding houses. Bai Wuji roared and swung his spear to the limit. Icy astral energy suppressed the soul. With Bai Wuji at the center, it was as if frost was flying in June, extremely cold. However, when facing Nie Donglu, even though Bai Wuji used his full strength, he still couldn't do anything to him. Golden astral energy shone in Nie Donglio's hands. He used the vast Yang9 Extreme's mysterious art to the limit. Bai Wuji, who was also good at close combat, was completely suppressed by Nie Donglu. Furthermore, Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud-reaching hands was a combination of hardness and softness. When the two were combined, his strength was clearly far greater than Bai Wuji's. At that moment, Bai Wuji was also filled with a sense of defeat. It was even more severe than when he was defeated by Shen Bai. After all, Shen Bai was just a stranger, while Nie Donglu and Bai Wuji had been fighting since they were children. Now, the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. Bai Wuji roared. The spear in his hand was dyed with a blood-red light. The cold blood condensed and stabbed at Nie Donglu like a dragon. Nie Donglu shook his head and said, "It's no use, Bai Wuji. You've never admitted defeat since you were a child, but do you know what your biggest weakness is? It's that you can't see yourself clearly. I didn't fight you before because I didn't want to engage in meaningless fights. But if we really fight, do you really think you can beat me?" As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Donglio's hand turned upside down. Golden astral energy condensed into a vortex, spiraling and twisting. It actually crushed the spear in Bai Wuji's hand. Bai Wuji coughed up a mouthful of blood and retreated. Nie Donglio's eyes flashed with killing intent. In the past, no matter how much Nie Donglu fought with Bai Wuji, Nie Donglu would control things to a certain extent because he didn't want things to get out of hand. The northern floating snow city and the Morgue village were both major northern Yen sections. At that time, the two sides were not connected yet, so there were no major conflicts. If Nie Donglu had killed Bai Wuji at that time, the northern floating snow city would definitely fight to the death with the Morgue village. But now the northern floating snow city had joined forces with the Chilean village to trick the Morgue village, causing the Morgue village, a powerful alliance, to suffer heavy losses. The two sides had already become sworn enemies. At this time, Nie Donglu had no intention of holding back. However, at that moment, a surge of demonic energy appeared behind Nie Donglu. He turned around abruptly, and a strange Dharma idol formed entirely out of astral energy appeared behind him. The left side was filled with demonic flames, while the right side was shimmering with Buddhist light. The Dharma form's palm descended, and the devil and Buddha merged into one. The powerful force shocked Nie Donglu, and he immediately burst out the strongest power of the vast Yang9 Extreme's mysterious art to resist. Boundless golden astral energy enveloped Nie Donglu, making him look like a small sun. But under Chu Xiu's Maravajra form, the golden astral energy around Nie Donglu suddenly shattered. Nie Donglu himself spat out a mouthful of blood, and looked at the person in front of him in horror. It's him! Nie Donglu recognized the identity of the person in front of him. Of course, he did not recognize Chu Xiu, but Lin Ye's identity. In the past, on the battlefield of the righteous and demonic path on Mount Floating Jade, it was this person who killed Xiahou Wujiang, and made Xiahou Zhan extremely furious. At this moment, Nie Donglu also understood everything. It was not the Qilian village that had colluded with the northern floating snow city, but the Qilian village that had colluded with the hidden devil clan. But Nie Donglu still vaguely remembered that during the battle of the righteous and demonic path on Mount Floating Jade, this person was only at the Five Qis origin realm. Now, he had actually reached the unity of heaven and man realm, and the strength he displayed was so terrifying, it was shocking. After coming to a realization, Nie Donglu did not say a word, but immediately turned around and fled. With Nie Dongliu's current strength, he was absolutely confident that he could fight against some unity of heaven and man realm martial artists. But this person in front of him was someone that the hidden devil clan focused on cultivating. When he was in the unity of heaven and man realm, he could probably fight against a martial Dao grandmaster. If Nie Donglu fought him head-on, he would be courting death. However, Nie Donglu did not notice that at this moment, Chu Xiu's eyes were also flashing with a cold, murderous intent. The way he looked at him was almost exactly the same as the way Nie Donglu looked at Bai Wuji just now. Chu Xiu and Nie Dongliu's enmity had been formed from the beginning. He did not forget how miserable he looked when he was being hunted by the memorial village. Chu Xiu had never been a broad-minded person. He had to take revenge for this. However, after so many times, either the timing was not right, or Nie Donglu was too slippery. Chu Xiu had never found a chance to kill him. This time, Nie Renlong and Han Baxian were entangled, and Nie Donglu was isolated and helpless. It could be said that this was the best time for Chu Xiu to make a move. If Nie Donglu did not die this time, it could only be said that he was also a person with luck, and his luck might even be stronger than Lu Fengxian's. Looking at Nie Dongliu's figure, Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands. His mental energy turned into endless threads, intertwining layer by layer, rushing towards Nie Donglu and wrapping around his primordial spirit. 9 major forms of soul assimilation, soul string web. In the past, when Chu Xiu's mental energy was weak, he could only use the soul string web to gather information. Now that Chu Xiu used the soul string web again, Nie Dongliu's figure suddenly stopped. He felt as if his soul was about to be pulled out from his body. Nie Donglu roared. His body was full of bloody light, and he actually burned his qi and blood to completely break free from the soul string web. He was very decisive. Unfortunately, it was still useless. Chu Xiu's figure was already close. He formed a seal with both hands, and a powerful and fierce aura condensed into a prison-suppressing Wisdom King Dharma. Holding the Wisdom King seal, he smashed it down on Nie Dongliu's head. The image of the prison-suppressing Wisdom King was extremely powerful. When it landed, even the world's Yuan Qi gave off an explosive sound. It really did have the powerful charm of a Wisdom King suppressing a prison and slaying a devil. In fact, among the Dharma powers of the great Vajra divine power, the one that Chu Xiu imitated the most was the Mara Vajra form. Because he was a dual cultivator of devil and Buddha, Chu Xiu could use at least 90% of the power of this Dharma idol. After all, the other Dharma idols were condensed by others. It was a little difficult for Chu Xiu to experience their charm. And this prison-suppressing Wisdom King Dharma, Chu Xiu could use 90% of its power and 10% of its charm. This was all thanks to Zhongxian. Zhongxian was famous in the Jianghu for his Wisdom King seal. However, Zhongxian had evolved the simplest Wisdom King seal into countless uses, including the prison-suppressing Wisdom King. When Chu Xiu fought with Zhongxian, he had experienced the terror of Zhongxian's prison-guarding Akalanatha seal and had gained some understanding of it. Therefore, he borrowed Zhongxian's prison-guarding Akalanatha seal to complete his prison-guarding Akalanatha form. Under the prison-suppressing Wisdom King Dharma, Nie Dongliu's qi and blood burned. The heaven and earth cloud hand moved, and the golden stellar energy intertwined with the power of qi and blood. He wanted to block the seal, But under Chu Xiu's prison-suppressing wisdom King Dharma, Nie Donglio's stellar energy shattered in less than 3 breaths. His qi and blood dissipated, and his arms could not withstand the powerful force. They twisted and completely shattered, and his body was sent flying. Chapter 524. In fact, Nie Donglu was very similar to Chu Xiu in some aspects. Both of them were vicious and merciless. They were also scheming. However, the only difference between them was their understanding of power. In the face of great power, all schemes were useless. That was why Chu Xiu was too lazy to use his brain most of the time when he could use his fists. Nie Donglu was different. He was too superstitious about his methods. Even though he was Han Baxian's disciple, he did not learn Han Baxian's aggressiveness. Looking at the top 5 on the Longhu leaderboard, which one of them got there by scheming? Even someone as stubborn as Zhong Xian could use his Akalanatha seal to destroy any scheme. Nie Donglu couldn't see through this, so he spent most of his energy on his schemes. So when facing Chu Xiu, Nie Donglu didn't have any room to fight back. Of course, even if he concentrated on training, it would not be of much use, because Nie Donglio's talent was not that amazing. However, if he was a little stronger, he would at least have a chance to struggle, unlike now, where he did not even have a chance to struggle. That did not matter though, because he, Nie Donglu, would definitely die today. With both of his arms crippled, Nie Donglu was basically half crippled. Seeing Chu Xiu's rapidly approaching figure, Nie Donglio's eyes showed a look of despair. He never thought he would die in a place like this. It should be said that his defeat this time was somewhat inexplicable. Everything had been planned out, but he was inexplicably ambushed. Then out of nowhere, this guy from the demonic path jumped out and revealed his murderous intent. Nie Donglu could feel that his opponent's murderous intent was the kind that wanted to kill him. It was as if they had a deep hatred for each other. The problem was that Nie Donglu did not remember having any grudges with the person in front of him. Why was this person so determined to kill him? However, this was not the time to think about this. There was only one thought in Nie Donglio's mind, and that was to escape. But Nie Donglio's arms were crippled, and he had already ignited his blood essence. Even if he wanted to escape, where could he go? Nie Donglio's eyes were filled with despair as he watched the figure covered in demonic flames approach. Everyone present could see what was happening to Nie Donglu, but no one could offer him any help. Previously, the Morgue Manor Alliance had more people, but now, the number of people in the northern fluttering Snow City and Chilean village far exceeded the Morgue Manor Alliance. Moreover, Han Ba was being held back by Pang Hu. Even if he wanted to attack, he would not have the chance. When Nie Renlong saw that Nie Donglu was in danger, his aura became completely berserk. He glared at Bai Hontian and said coldly, "Get out of my way." He only had one son, Nie Donglu. Nie Renlong had spent a lot of effort on Nie Donglu. It could be said that Nie Donglu was not only his son, but also Nie Renlong's future hope, the hope of inheriting the morgue. Now, he had spent so much effort to scheme and lay a solid foundation for the morgue. Who was all this for? It was all for Nie Donglu. Now that Nie Donglu was dead, who would he leave everything to? Would he leave it to the other warriors in the morgue? The morgue could only belong to the Nie family. Bai Hontian narrowed his eyes at Nie Renlong and said indifferently, "Manor Lord Nie, there is no need to be anxious. You and I have yet to determine a victor. This is a fight between the younger generation. Let them settle it themselves." Bai Hontian was actually happy to see Nie Donglu die, especially after seeing Bai Wuji lose to Nie Donglu. The major sects in Jianghu did not only look at the present, but also at the future, the victory of the next generation. I am not as good as you in this generation, but if I can cultivate an outstanding disciple in the next generation, that will be the time to decide the winner. Bai Wuji's strength and ability were not bad, but compared to Nie Donglu, he was much weaker. Therefore, Bai Hontian was also worried that the next Bai Wuji would not be able to defeat Nie Donglu when he took over the fluttering Snow City. Now that Nie Donglu was dead, it was exactly what he wanted. "Get out of my way!" Nie Renlong shouted angrily. The blood and qi in his body burned as he slammed his palm down, covering the sky and covering the sun. The universe reached the clouds, and his hand picked up the stars. Endless qi of heaven and earth and the power of blood and qi condensed in it. The powerful force made by Hontian's expression change. Was this guy crazy? Why was he so desperate? He did not know that a hypocrite like Nie Renlong was willing to sacrifice so much for his son. To burn his qi and qi so quickly, it was certain that his yuan qi would be greatly damaged. Nie Renlong wanted to fight with his life, but Bai Hantian did not. Therefore, the moment Nie Renlong attacked, Bai Hantian immediately formed a seal with his hands. Countless ice qi condensed around his body, like a mirror-like ice palace. It was densely packed and covered his body as he retreated. As the palm descended like a falling star, the powerful impact caused the ice mirrors in front of Bai Hantian to shatter one after another. His entire body was blasted away. However, at this time, Nie Renlong did not follow up with another attack. Instead, he went straight for Chu Xiao. Nie Renlong controlled the universe with both hands, and two forces, one clear and one turbid, condensed around him. They stretched for hundreds of feet, like two huge dragons, snaking toward Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao frowned. This Nie Renlong was really desperate for his son, Nie Donglu. Was he not afraid that he would not be able to save his son, and instead get himself into trouble? Bai Hantian was also a good-for-nothing. As long as he dared to fight Nie Renlong with all his might, he could wait until Chu Xiao killed Nie Donglu before launching a sneak attack from behind. Nie Renlong would die without a doubt, and this battle could even completely destroy the morgue. Chu Xiao was definitely not bragging. He now had the strength to fight a martial Dao Grandmaster, or rather, the strength to cause harm to a martial Dao Grandmaster. It was a pity that Bai Hantian was not a match for Nie Renlong in a head-on battle, but a sneak attack from behind was not a problem. It was a pity that Bai Hantian did not live up to expectations and wasted such a good opportunity. Seeing that the two dragons of earth energy were about to attack, Chu Xiao's eyes revealed a surging murderous intent. Today, Nie Donglu must die, and no one could stop him. In an instant, the murderous intent in Chu Xiao's eyes dissipated. Chu Xiao used the great art of mental demons rotation and the great art of extinguishing heaven and earth destroying soul to the extreme, causing Chu Xiao's eyes to become hollow and deep, like two abysses. Invisible mental energy condensed into an invisible seven-stringed zither in front of Chu Xiao. As Chu Xiao strummed the strings, a strange sound rang through the world. In the past, when Chu Xiao used the soul-suppressing Hades song, Chu Xiao had never overdrawn all of his mental energy to use it. This was the first time. The originally invisible soul-suppressing Hades song rang in everyone's ears. To ordinary people, the sound was a little intoxicating, but to Nie Renlong, it penetrated deep into his soul, causing the aura around him to dissipate. His aura became weaker and weaker, and even the two dragons of earth energy could no longer be controlled. They kept trembling and looked like they were about to shatter. The soul-suppressing Hades song could even silently extract one's primordial spirit and suppress them in the netherworld. At this time, Chu Xiao used the soul-suppressing Hades song at full force, and his face was pale. However, with the mask, no one noticed it. Nie Renlong's eyes were a little unfocused, and his aura was completely depressed. The two dragons of earth energy suddenly shattered. But at this time, Nie Renlong suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a long cry, completely interrupting the soul-suppressing Hades song. The invisible seven-string zither in front of Chu Xiao shattered, and the mental energy backfired, causing Chu Xiao to let out a muffled grunt, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Nie Renlong being able to break free from the soul-suppressing Hades song did not mean that his mental energy was stronger than Chu Xiao's. It was just that his willpower was too strong, to the extent that he could break free from Chu Xiao's mental energy secret technique with just his willpower. But it did not matter. In this short time, Nie Donglio's time of death had come. Chu Xiao stepped out and appeared in front of Nie Donglu in the blink of an eye. The powerful devil qi directly shattered Nie Donglio's protective upstanding qi, and his palm landed on Nie Donglio's heart meridian, completely shattering it. Looking at Chu Xiao in front of him, Nie Donglio's mouth moved, but he did not even say a word before he died. The one who knew you best was often your enemy. Chu Xiao had personally killed Nie Donglu. Perhaps he had already recognized Chu Xiao the moment Nie Donglu died. Of course, it was also possible that he did not recognize him, but that was no longer important. With his death, the grudge between Chu Xiao and Nie Donglu was completely over. If it wasn't for Chu Xiao, with Nie Donglio's considerable strength, as well as his schemes, the morgue would have been even more glorious under Nie Donglio's leadership. But now, the morgue didn't have a successor. So the grudge between Chu Xiu and Nye Donglu was over, but the grudge between him and Nye Renlong was not. At that moment, Nye Renlong looked at Nye Dongliu's corpse on the ground with a lifeless expression. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The son he had raised for more than 20 years had died here just like that? Just when he was ready to gradually transfer the power of the morgue to Nye Donglu had died here. Nye Renlong absolutely could not accept this outcome. He had stepped into the martial world when he was young, and even the brothers who had gathered with him in the past had died because of his schemes. Why did Nye Renlong do it? Perhaps it was because of the oath he had made when he was young and humiliated, to stand out from the crowd. With the current power of the morgue, Nye Renlong's oath had been fulfilled, but he was still not satisfied. He had been born in the wilderness, but he did not want his bloodline to be born in the wilderness forever. The morgue was a gathering in the martial world, but the person who organized the gathering had to have the surname Nye. But now, with Nye Dongliu's death, everything had become an illusion. This made Nye Renlong feel despair, as if his mind was collapsing. Looking at Chu Xiu, Nye Renlong's eyes gradually turned crimson red. Even the colorless stellar energy around his body turned slightly black. This was the sign of him turning into a demon that would cause his cultivation to go berserk. Chapter 525. Chu Xiu cultivated the path of diabolism, so he naturally knew what it meant to be possessed by the devil. Only the heavens knew how much Nye Renlong valued Nye Donglu. He had killed Nye Donglu, but had triggered Nye Renlong into the devil? When he killed Xiahou Wujiang on floating Jade Mountain, Xiahou Zhan was only furious. His reaction was far less intense than Nye Renlong's. Or rather, this was the difference between having one son and many sons. At this moment, Nye Renlong was staring at Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu hadn't said a single word, the killing intent radiating from him had already been condensed to the extreme, to the extent that it could even affect the surrounding phenomena. The originally sunny weather was now overcast, and the atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme. Chu Xiu frowned and said to Bai Hantian, "Governor Bai, if you and I join forces and kill Nye Renlong, not only will the north have one less risk, but you can also let the northern fluttering snow city become the master of Liaodong." Bai Hantian thought for a moment and suddenly laughed. He then immediately shouted, "Disciples of the northern fluttering snow city, listen up, retreat immediately." Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed. He did not expect this scene. Bai Hantian, who looked like a straightforward and simple-minded guy, had actually played such a trick. Bai Hantian's thinking was very simple. He had achieved his goal, and he did not want to fight to the death with Nye Renlong anymore. After this battle, the morgue had been completely destroyed. Especially without Nye Donglu, the heir, it was easy to cause instability in the morgue. Therefore, the morgue had been destroyed, and they were no longer qualified to challenge the northern fluttering snow city. If that was the case, why would he waste his effort to kill Nye Renlong? Moreover, to Bai Hantian, Qilian Stockade Village was not a good place either. After settling the issue at the memorial hall, if Qilian Stockade Village were to be destroyed again, it would be best if both sides suffered heavy losses. Hence, at this moment, Nye Renlong's heart demon had entered his body and he had already fallen into a berserk state of Qigong deviation. Bai Hantian could not wait for Nye Renlong to fight against this fellow from the Devil's Path and the Qilian Stockade until both sides suffer. Most importantly, Bai Hantian was afraid that if he killed Nye Renlong, it would affect the reputation of the northern fluttering snow city. Although Bai Hantian knew that Nye Renlong was a hypocrite, most people in Jianghu did not know. They still thought that Nye Renlong was the chivalrous villager Nye. Therefore, if Bai Hantian killed Nye Renlong, there would probably be many people in Jianghu who would curse him. Although it was not to the extent that Bai Hantian would lose a piece of flesh, it would not feel so good. At this time, in Jianghu, the Jianghu warriors had fallen into a fierce battle. Han Baxian was also enraged because his disciple had been killed, so he was suppressing Pang Hu. Yangbai City. Was Qi. Qi erupted. Bah. He Pang. He Liang. Bai Wu. Bai Renlong's. Sensing Nye Renlong's murderous gaze, Chu Xiu knew that something was wrong. Demonic qi erupted from his body as he quickly retreated. Chu Xiu actually had some idea of how strong he was. When facing a weaker martial Dao grandmaster like Chao Liandong, Chu Xiu still had some confidence to fight him to the death, But now facing a martial Dao grandmaster like Nie Rinlong who was on the Feng Yun list, fighting him head-on was simply courting death, especially when Nie Rinlong was still in a state of rage. Seeing that Chu Xiu was escaping, Nie Rinlong moved. Like a dragon, he leaped and appeared behind Chu Xiu. He held the universe in his hand and stirred the wind and clouds. In an instant, all the qi of heaven and earth around Chu Xiu was mobilized. The qi of heaven and earth turned into a whirlpool, pulling Chu Xiu toward Nie Rinlong. Behind Chu Xiu, Nie Rinlong's eyes were scarlet red. As his palm descended, pitch-black demonic energy fused into the huge palm made of astral energy. It was 1,000 feet wide and smashed towards Chu Xiu's head like a small mountain. There was no way to avoid it. Chu Xiu was surrounded by devil qi and Buddha's light. The Mara's Vajra took Nie Rinlong's palm. However, just like Chu Xiu had crushed Nie Donglu, Nie Rinlong was now crushing him. The palm fell and the Mara's Vajra shattered. Chu Xiu was forced to take a few steps back. He tried hard not to vomit blood. After turning into a demon, Nie Rinlong's strength had increased exponentially. Missing his attack, Nie Rinlong clenched the stars in his hand. Countless qi of heaven and earth pulled the qi of heaven and earth and smashed down like stars. The sun, moon, and stars rotated in Chu Xiu's eyes. He used the last bit of his mental strength to activate the heaven sun gazing at air. The moment Nie Rinlong clenched the stars, he immediately changed his direction and dodged. However, he could only flee in all directions. Soon, the ground was a mess. Looking at Bai Hantian, who was still watching from the side, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Bai Hantian, you gave up a chance to eradicate a great enemy. You will regret it in the future. What I hate the most are people who don't keep their word. Bai Hantian, I will make you pay for what happened today." Bai Hantian did not care about Chu Xiu's threat at all. It would have been fine if it had been a martial arts master from the Phaseless Demon Sect or the Shadow Demon Sect who said that. However, what right did Lin Yi have to say that? Even if Lin Yi became as accomplished as the little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen in the future, the celestial master mansion would not destroy a sect just for Zhang Qingzhen. To Bai Hantian, Chu Xiu's threat was nothing more than cursing in exasperation. However, in reality, Chu Xiu had already begun to curse in his heart. The heaven sun gazing at air also required mental strength to be used. However, when Chu Xiu used the soul-suppressing Hades song with all his strength, his mental strength was almost drained. Therefore, Chu Xiu had only used the heaven sun gazing at air a few times before he had a splitting headache and could no longer hold on. This time, Bai Hantian had set Chu Xiu up. According to Chu Xiu's character, he would definitely remember this until the day the drifting snow city was destroyed in the far north. In fact, it was not that Chu Xiu was careless, but Chu Xiu did not expect Bai Hantian to have such a strange way of thinking. Bai Hantian had given up on a situation where he could have destroyed the morgue. Chu Xiu shouted at Pang Hu, "Leader Pang! Retreat!" Pang Hu wanted to escape with the people of Qilian village, but Han Baxian said coldly, "You want to leave? You want to leave after killing my disciple? Leave something behind." Han Baxian's body shone with a dazzling golden light. He used his fists, palms, and fingers. All kinds of martial arts techniques were at his fingertips. Each of them was fierce and violent, and the power of battle and killing was displayed to the extreme. At this time, Nie Rinlong's body was surrounded by black devil qi. Although he had fallen into a state of qi deviation, Nie Rinlong had not yet suffered from the backlash. Instead, his strength had increased to a state that was even stronger than when he was at his peak. When the palm landed, it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. The powerful qi sealed off all escape routes for Chu Xiu, forcing Chu Xiu to take it head-on. However, with his mental strength depleted, with Chu Xiu's current strength, even if he was willing to reveal his true identity and use all his trump cards, he still could not stop Nie Rinlong. With a loud bang, the gang qi around Chu Xiu shattered and he was sent flying by Nie Rinlong. A stream of blood flowed down his mask. Sensing the strength of that power, Chu Xiu's entire body was instantly shrouded in a bloody mist. He secretly formed the inner binding seal, and his speed and power erupted to the extreme. From the looks of it, it was the demonic path secret technique, the blood escape. If an ordinary person encountered such a situation, they would definitely not choose to give chase. When his speed was at the extreme, the person behind him would definitely have to choose to use a secret technique to catch up. As a result, it would become a mutual exhaustion, and it was not worth it. However, at this time, Nie Renlong's rationality was almost gone. There was only one obsession left in his mind, and that was to kill Chu Xiao. Therefore, at this time, Nie Renlong did not care about anything else. His qi and blood burned, gang qi and devil qi lingered behind him, and his speed exploded to the extreme, chasing after Chu Xiao. Nie Renlong did not know any secret techniques related to speed, but he was a martial Dao master after all. The power brought by burning his qi and blood was much higher than Chu Xiao's, so his speed was not inferior to Chu Xiao's. Burning his qi and blood, coupled with the internal binding seal, almost in the blink of an eye, the two of them disappeared. Bai Hontian muttered behind him. Madman! I didn't expect Nie Renlong to have such a crazy side to him. Behind Bai Hontian, Bai Wuji really wanted to ask his father if he was killed. Would he be like Nie Renlong, who would do everything in his power to take revenge for him? However, after thinking about it, Bai Wuji did not ask this question. Nie Renlong only had one son, Nie Donglu, and he had poured too much effort into Nie Donglu. That was why he was so crazy at this time. However, Bai Hontian had more than one son. If Bai Wuji died, at worst, he could find another son to raise. The far north floating snow city had been passed down for thousands of years, and its foundation was deep. As long as the heir was not such an idiot, even if he was a little mediocre, the far north floating snow city would be fine. If this question was asked, both sides would be embarrassed, so Bai Wuji rationally did not say anything. Meanwhile, on Pang Hu's side, he was also fighting with Han Baxian for real. Han Baxian dared to fight with his life, so did he not? Therefore, Pang Hu also began to fight with his life on the line. Both sides fought fiercely for more than 10 moves, and it ended in a lose-lose situation. Although Han Baxian was angry that his disciple had been killed, he was not Nie Renlong after all. He was not willing to risk his life for Nie Donglu. Therefore, after he was injured, Han Baxian did not continue to fight and could only watch as Pang Hu left with his men. The rest of the martial artists from the Manor of Loyalty were perplexed. The young master was dead, and the manor master had gone missing due to qi deviation. Where should they go? Only Bai Hontian had a smile on his face. For this battle, his Drifts Now city was the final victor. The manor of the manor and the Chilean village bandits had both suffered heavy losses. This time, the far north floating snow city was completely peaceful. Chapter 526. It did not feel good to be chased by someone. It was even worse to be chased by a martial Dao master. In just a few months, the feeling of being chased by 2 martial Dao masters was quite unpleasant. That was how Chu Xiao felt at the moment. It was just that when he was chased by Qiao Liandong in the past, Chu Xiao was still confident that he could turn around and fight back, but now that he was facing Nie Renlong, Chu Xiao did not even have a chance to fight back. Therefore, when facing Nie Renlong's pursuit, Chu Xiao only had one choice, and that was to drag it out until Nie Renlong could no longer afford it. However, Nie Renlong had completely entered qi deviation at the moment, and his state of mind had been filled with obsession. At this time, it was useless even if Chu Xiao dragged it out. Nie Renlong would definitely not be satisfied if he did not kill Chu Xiao. Qi and blood power was burning rapidly, and it had already consumed some of Chu Xiao's vitality. However, Nie Renlong was still chasing closely behind him, and his face was extremely pale. Nie Renlong was a martial Dao master, and Chu Xiao also had a strong physical body. Therefore, Nie Renlong would not be able to gain any advantage by doing this. In the end, both sides would only suffer losses. However, Nie Renlong, who was only left with obsession, could not think of that at all. The only thing he could think of was to kill Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao frowned. Nie Renlong wanted to die with him, but Chu Xiao did not want to die with Nie Renlong. After escaping for 15 minutes, Chu Xiao's figure suddenly came to a halt, and the qi and blood power around him erupted to the extreme in an instant. However, he did not continue to accelerate and escape. Instead, he used the qi and blood power to stab his mental strength, causing Chu Xiao, who had just recovered a little mental strength, to completely overdraft his strength. The rotation of mental demon was cast silently, but Chu Xiao's eyes were like a deep abyss, completely pulling Nie Renlong's mental strength into it. As the name suggested, the rotation of mental demon could even use mental strength to trigger the opponent's mental demon after mastering it. It was extremely evil and could kill people without them knowing. Under normal circumstances, the great art of mental demons rotation was used to create illusions and stir up the opponent's inner demons. However, Nie Renlong had already fallen into a trance. Chu Xiu's use of the great art of mental demons rotation was not to attack, but to help Nie Renlong resolve his trance. In the illusion, Nie Renlong's life's memories were evoked. There was his yearning for chivalry in Jianghu during his childhood, the nervousness when he first stepped into Jianghu, the heroism when he became sworn brothers with good friends, the indignation when he was humiliated, and the complete change of his state of mind. For the sake of benefits, he did not hesitate to plot against his sworn brothers in the past. In the end, he built up the prestige of the morgue, but his heart was already as hard as stone. This was the real Nie Renlong, and it was the portrayal of his life. Whether human nature was good or evil, no one could say for sure. However, no one was born a good person, and no one was born a bad person. Nie Renlong was like this. He had been a good person and a bad person. Even now, there were people who scolded him in Jiujiu, but there were more people who appreciated his kindness. Immersed in the boundless memories, the demonic aura around Nie Renlong's body gradually dissipated. However, at this moment, he took a few steps back and vomited a large mouthful of blood. Even his body was covered in cracks, some of which were so deep that his bones could be seen. The reason why Nie Renlong was able to possess such strength after his cultivation went berserk was because of his obsession and demonic qi. Even if he killed Chu Xiu in the end, he would not be able to survive. Now that Chu Xiu had helped him get rid of the state of qi deviation, without the support of devil qi and obsession, Nie Renlong did not die, but the hidden dangers of qi deviation had erupted in an instant, causing Nie Renlong to completely lose the ability to fight, and he no longer had the ability to chase after Chu Xiu. Sometimes, saving someone was saving oneself. Chu Xiu saved Nie Renlong, but it was for the sake of his own survival. At this time, Chu Xiu, who had overdrawn all his mental strength, was as pale as a dead man, and his mind was a mess. He only had one last thought left, and that was to escape back to the Guanzhong torture room. Nie Renlong stimulated the last bit of his strength to escape. Although there was no devil qi in his eyes, Nie Renlong was still full of murderous intent, but he was powerless. Closing his eyes, Nie Renlong let out a long sigh. His son was dead, and the morgue had suffered heavy losses. Now, he was also seriously injured, and he would not be able to recover without a year and a half. But it was not a loss for the morgue to be destroyed by such a person. A person who could think of saving himself by saving his opponent at the critical moment of life and death. His state of mind was terrifyingly calm. At this time, a faint sound came from behind. Some warriors of the morgue and the forces of the Morgue Alliance who had not died also rushed over with their people. Although they did not know what to do before, after calming down, they could only search along the route that Nie Renlong used to chase after Chu Xiu. They did not expect to find Nie Renlong. However, when they saw Nie Renlong's injuries, they were shocked. "Manor Lord, are you okay?" Nie Renlong waved his hand and said in a tone without any emotion, "I'm fine. This time, I lost, and so did the Morgue Alliance. Let's go back to Yendong." Whether it was the people of the morgue or the other forces in the alliance, their faces became extremely ugly. It was not easy to get the territory of Liaodong Prefecture, but in the end, they had to give it up in just a few days. Most importantly, they had suffered heavy losses this time. If they withdrew now, it could be said that they had suffered a great loss. But at this time, Nie Renlong suddenly said, "Send someone to Wine Sweeping Building and ask them to help me release a message to the whole Jianghu to hunt down Lin Yi of the Yinma clan. If anyone can kill Lin Yi, I will worship him as my master and give up the position of the Manor Lord." As soon as he said that, everyone present was shocked. Has Nie Renlong gone mad? Although the mortuary manor was heavily damaged this time, Nie Renlong was not dead yet. There were also many warriors in the mortuary manor. Even if they lost some of their essence, they could recover in a few years. But now, Nie Renlong wanted to give up his position as the Manor Lord to kill a person. If he was not crazy, then what was? Nie Renlong said expressionlessly, "Do you all think I'm crazy? Let me tell you now, I'm not crazy. Now that Dong Lu is dead, who can I hand over the morgue to in the future? Whoever helps me to avenge my son will be the new Manor Lord of the morgue." Everyone present was silent. At this time, they believed that what Nie Renlong said should be true. Because in the past, although Nie Renlong did not say it clearly, Everyone knew that the morgue was hereditary. The position of the manor lord could only be surnamed Nye. The so-called training of talents and so on were actually to train Nye Dongliu's trusted subordinates. But now that Nye Donglu was dead, Nye Renlong's heart was dead. Using the position of manor lord to avenge his son's death was worth it to Nye Renlong. 3 days later, what happened in Liaodong Prefecture had spread throughout the Jianghu. Wind-sweeping building was very powerful. If there was a very important message, wind-sweeping building could directly use the formation to transmit it to the whole Jianghu within 3 days. At this time, Nye Renlong hated Chu Xiu to the core. Of course, wind-sweeping building was willing to pay a high price for wind-sweeping building to transmit the message through the formation. Originally, the actions of the morgue village did not cause any commotion even in northern Yen. After all, it was normal for a sect like the morgue village to wage war and attack. It was just that the morgue village had always been obsessed with fame, so they did not take any action. Now that the morgue took action, no one would care as long as the target was not them. Therefore, whether it was the imperial court of the northern Yen, the divine martial school of southern Yen, or the Huangfu family of western Yen, they did not have any reaction when they heard the news. But no one expected that the morgue would fall into such a situation. The morgue alliance, which had a strong momentum, had completely collapsed. The morgue was directly hit hard, and even Nye Renlong himself had been seriously injured. And Nye Donglu, a famous young hero in the whole Jianghu, had died in the hands of the diabolism, which made many people sigh. For a sect like the morgue that rose from the wilderness, the thing they were most afraid of was the problem of the successor. Because their foundation was too weak, even if they rose because of one person, they could also be destroyed because of one person. Nye Dongliu's strength and means were considered to be the top figure among the young generation. With him inheriting the morgue, people could already foresee that the morgue would definitely be stronger than it was now, and its foundation would also be more stable. But now that Nye Donglu was dead, the future of the morgue was not so obvious. But what really caught people's attention was the condition that Nye Renlong had offered. Whoever killed Lin Yi could become the leader of the morgue. That was the morgue of the 6 gangs of Ranha, one of the top forces in the Jianghu. Although it was seriously injured this time, its strength was still there. When the news came out, it caused an uproar in the whole Jianghu, and the name Lin Yi was also known in the Jianghu. One could not help but admire Wind-Sweeping Tower's intelligence system. Almost all the information about Lin Ye's identity had been dug out by Wind-Sweeping Tower. Whether it was the matter of targeting the morgue, or his performance in the battle between the righteous and diabolism on Floating Jade Mountain, or even the things that Chu Xiu said and did as Lin Yi during the Diabolism Alliance meeting, all of them were exposed by Wind-Sweeping Tower. During the Diabolism Alliance meeting, there was Wei Shuya, a powerhouse in the true fire refinement realm. No matter how strong Wind-Sweeping Tower's anemophilia was, it could not find out what was going on. Therefore, Wind-Sweeping Tower could know the details of the situation. Obviously, there were spies from the righteous sects in the Bright Demon lineage or the Hidden Demon lineage who leaked the information. Spies and disguises were not unique to the Hidden Demon lineage. Chapter 527. Ever since the righteous and demonic battles on Floating Jade Mountain, the demonic Tao had shown signs of rising. However, the Yinma clan was still very low-key. This was the Yinma clan's strategy. They would let the moon-worshipping cult and the Bright Demon clan take the limelight. It was more important for the Yinma clan to keep a low profile and accumulate strength. However, as Lin Ye's identity spread throughout the Jianghu, the Yinma clan also gained a lot of limelight. Moreover, Wind-Sweeping Tower even placed Lin Ye's identity on the Longhu leaderboard. He was ranked 7th on the Longhu leaderboard, even above LV Fengxian and Yan Fian. The battle where Chu Xiu killed Nye Donglu did not actually add much to his achievements on the Longhu list. After all, Nye Donglu was already ranked outside the top 10. However, in the end, Chu Xiu was able to escape Nye Renlong's desperate pursuit and even seriously injure Nye Renlong. This was very shocking. Although Nye Renlong's injuries were mainly caused by his cultivation going berserk and his own backlash, to be able to escape in such a state and almost exhaust Nye Renlong to death, it was reasonable for Wind-Sweeping Tower to rank him 7th on the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. In fact, there were not many demonic Dao elites on the Longhu list. This was also the result of Wind-Sweeping Tower's deliberate suppression. For example, Yi Tianxie from the Evil Pole sect had refined the Blood Dragon's Niden and cultivated the Blood Dragon Heart Sutra as a human. Wind Sweeping Tower should be able to easily calculate that even if Yi Tianxia was not in the top 5 on the Longhu list, he could at least be in the top 10. However, Wind Sweeping Tower turned a blind eye to this. There was also the moon-worshipping cult's holy maiden. Although she did not have the experience of fighting alone during the righteous and demonic Dao battles on floating Jade Mountain, her goo insects had caused many casualties. Moreover, none of the moon-worshipping cult's holy maidens were simple people. Wind Sweeping Tower knew all these things, but they did not rank them on the Longhu list. This was not because Wind Sweeping Tower was unfair, but because of the situation. Currently, the righteous Dao was very powerful. If all the people on the Longhu list were demonic Dao demons, what would that look like? Therefore, some deliberate suppression was unavoidable. However, with everything that Chu Xiu had done as Lin Yi, coupled with the fact that Nie Renlong had already announced the bounty to the entire pugilistic world, it would be inexcusable if a demon Dao elite like him, whose life was worth the position of the Manor Master, was still unable to enter the Longhu leaderboard. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu was unaware of all of this. At this moment, he was hiding within a barren mountain in the south of Swallow Mountain to recover from his injuries. After exchanging 2 moves with Nie Renlong, Chu Xiu was only slightly injured. It could only be regarded as a minor injury. He would be fine after a few days of recuperation. The real problem with Chu Xiu was the consumption of his spiritual power. Under the premise that his spiritual power was almost depleted, Chu Xiu had overdrawn his spiritual power to use the mental demon rotation technique. This was simply adding insult to injury to Chu Xiu's spiritual power. Now, Chu Xiu had even injured the foundation of his primordial spirit. If he was not careful, it was very likely that it would leave a permanent injury. Therefore, after recuperating for a month, Chu Xiu directly came out of seclusion and prepared to return to Guanzhong. It was useless no matter how he tried to heal the injuries on his primordial spirit. It was better to return to Guanzhong first and think of a solution. However, because of the injuries on the foundation of his primordial spirit, not only could Chu Xiu not use his spiritual power, but even his perception had been suppressed to a level similar to that of an ordinary person. This was a little dangerous for Chu Xiu. A warrior's perception was undoubtedly very important. Otherwise, if someone sneaked up on you from behind, you would not be able to detect it. If you waited until the attack was already in front of you before you remembered to defend or block it, it would be too late. Chu Xiu did not know that Nie Renlong had made such a big move to kill him, but Chu Xiu could vaguely guess that the righteous manor would most likely put him on the wanted list in northern Yen. Right now, Chu Xiu only had his spiritual power and perception destroyed, not his martial arts. In fact, he was not afraid of the people from the righteous manor. Chu Xiu just thought it was troublesome. If the righteous manor put him on the wanted list, after killing one group, another group would certainly come. Being entangled was a small matter. What Chu Xiu was afraid of was his original identity being exposed. If Chu Xiu took off his mask and returned to the Guanzhong torture room with his original appearance, it would not be appropriate either. It would also arouse suspicion. After all, Chu Xiu was now punished to face the wall. Everyone in the Guanzhong torture room knew about it. Naturally, it could not be hidden from the outside world. However, now that Chu Xiu suddenly appeared in northern Yen, if someone wanted to think about it, they might be able to speculate some clues. Of course, it was not that Chu Xiu did not have a way. In fact, the simplest way was not to use the identity of Lin Yi or Chu Xiu. Instead, he could hide his identity and return to the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore, at night, Chu Xiu hid his breath and sneaked into a small town. He stole a set of ordinary linen clothes, slightly changed his appearance, and put on a mask and a bamboo hat. He randomly found an ordinary long sword and carried it on his back. Although it was a little strange, it did not attract attention. After all, there were all kinds of people in Jianghu. Some people might hide their appearance because of their strange appearance or because they were disfigured in a fight. This was also a very normal thing. After dressing up like this, Chu Xiu finally started his journey openly, ready to return to Guanzhong. At this time in the Morgue Manor, Nie Renlong's face was pale, and his breath was extremely low. However, he did not go into closed-door training to heal his wounds. Instead, he stared at an old man in Taoist robes in front of him and said in a hoarse voice, "Master Yuanji, can you really not calculate the whereabouts of that devil?" The old man in Taoist robes in front of him was a famous fortune-teller in northern Yen, the independent cultivator Yuanji. His nickname was 3 days without missing. It was said that Yuan Ji was a fortune teller who could calculate everything that had happened in 3 days without missing anything, so he got such a nickname. At this moment, Yuan Ji said with a bitter expression, "Villa Lord Nye, you want this old Taoist to calculate a person's whereabouts out of thin air? This is simply impossible. Those who know everything under the heavens with a pinch of their fingers are immortals, not fortune tellers. Moreover, the person you want to calculate is a great expert in the oneness of heaven and man realm. When a warrior reaches the oneness of heaven and man realm, he can borrow a trace of the power of heaven and earth. Although it is only a trace, it also means that he has a trace of power that is in harmony with heaven and earth. Calculating a warrior in this realm is like calculating the heaven and earth. The difficulty is more than 100 times that of a warrior in the 5 Chi's origin realm. Also, I heard that Lin Ye's mental strength is extremely powerful. Even you have fallen into his trap. As a fortune teller of my generation, we are most afraid of encountering martial artists with powerful mental strength. If we are not careful, not to mention divining the other party's information, we might even suffer a backlash. Since Lin Yi can make you suffer in terms of mental strength, I'm afraid the difficulty of divining him is no less than divining a martial Dao master. I really can't do it." Nye Renlong said in a deep voice, "Master Yuan Ji, you don't have to worry. Lin Ye's mental strength is indeed very strong. However, when he fought me, his mental strength was depleted. He was even severely injured. He can't be compared to when he was at his peak. It's definitely safe for you to calculate his whereabouts. You couldn't do it when Lin Yi was at his peak. Now that his mental strength has been damaged and he is severely injured, can't you do it?" Yuan Ji hurriedly complained, "But Manor Lord, I don't have anything now. What can I use for divination?" Moreover, Yuan Ji was interrupted by Nye Renlong before he could finish his sentence. Nye Renlong said faintly, "Master Yuan Ji, do you know the pain of losing a son? Do you know the pain of spending half your life nurturing a hope, only to have it die prematurely?" Master Yuan Ji did not say anything. However, he thought to himself, "I don't have a son. Of course I don't know." He wanted to have a son, but cultivating divination was equivalent to prying into the secrets of heaven. If he forcefully interfered with karma, he would definitely be punished by heaven. Therefore, the line of fortune tellers was destined to be flawed. Master Yuan Ji was destined to be childless and live alone for the rest of his life. Therefore, even though he secretly kept more than 10 young concubines, he was living like a monk now. Since he was destined to be childless, he could not be bothered to think about or do anything else. Nye Renlong said calmly, "You won't be able to understand the despair and pain. All I want now is revenge. For that, I'm willing to give up my position as the Manor Lord. Master Yuan Ji, tell me, is there anything I can't do?" "Master Yuan Ji, it's fine if you don't want to do it for me. Why don't you do it for yourself? See if you can walk out of my gathering today." Manor. There was no killing intent in Nye Renlong's eyes as he stared straight at Master Yuan Ji. However, his stare made Master Yuan Ji feel a chill run down his spine. It was only at this moment that Master Yuan Ji realized that the person before him was no longer the amiable and courteous village master Nye of the Morgue village. He was just a crazy father who wanted to avenge his son. In order to avenge his son, Nye Renlong could give up his position as the Manor Lord. At this moment, he could disregard his reputation and make himself unable to walk out of the manor. A wise man submits to circumstances. Master Yuan Ji hurriedly said, "Manor Lord Nye, don't be anxious. It just so happens that my cultivation has improved greatly recently. Even if I don't have my birth date or any related items, I can deduce some clues just by deducing the name. However, it will definitely be unclear. I hope you won't blame me, Manor Lord." Nye Renlong nodded and waved his hand. Immediately, a large pile of violet gold, elixirs, and other items were moved to Master Yuan Ji's side. However, Master Yuan Ji felt even more pressured when he saw these items. It was obvious that if he could not deduce anything, these items would be used to buy his life. Therefore, Master Yuan Ji did not dare to be careless. He took out a compass, an array diagram, and lit up 3 extremely precious spirit-concentrating incense. He gathered his qi and started forming hand seals to deduce. The atmosphere in the room was extremely oppressive. Apart from Nye Renlong, the other warriors of the Manor Lord did not even dare to breathe loudly. After a long while, Master Yuanji suddenly opened his eyes and said in surprise, Manor Lord Nye, are you sure that demon's name is Lin Yi? According to the results of my deduction, Lin Yi is a fellow who has been dead for many years. Chapter 528. No matter how Master Yuanji calculated, he ended up calculating a dead person. This was something that Nye Renlong absolutely could not accept. Seeing that Nye Renlong's expression wasn't right, Master Yuanji quickly said, Villa Master Nye, it's not that I don't want to do mental divination, but this is what the divination says. Moreover, Manor Lord Nye, think about it. Lin Yi is from the Yinma clan. Those fellows from the Yinma clan are best at changing their names and hiding. We don't know Lin Ye's true identity, but what if the identity he revealed in the Yinma clan was also fake? Nye Renlong said coldly. Is there really no other way? Master Yuanji hesitated for a moment before saying, Actually, there is a way, but I'm worried that you won't be able to handle it. What is it? Has your son's body not been buried yet? Nye Renlong nodded and frowned. Why are you asking this? Nye Donglio's body hadn't been buried. Nye Renlong had sealed it in an ice coffin. He was going to bury Lin Ye's head with Nye Donglu once he got it. Master Yuanji glanced at Nye Renlong's expression and said carefully, The path of divination emphasizes karma. Lin Yi killed the young villamaster and was tainted by this karma. If I use the remaining blood qi in the young villamaster's body to perform divination, the probability will be much higher. Nye Renlong's expression was gloomy and he didn't say anything. After a moment of silence, Nye Renlong said, Bring the young villamaster's coffin over. A moment later, an ice coffin was brought over with Nye Donglio's body lying in it. Since Chu Xiao had only shattered Nye Donglio's heart meridian, his body was still relatively intact. Master Yuanji said carefully, Villamaster Nye, I'll start now? Nye Renlong nodded. Grandmaster Yuanji let out a long sigh. He took out a golden brush, dipped it in gold powder, and drew strange runes on Nye Donglio's corpse. Finally, he formed a seal with both hands, and the golden runes trembled. There seemed to be the sound of blood flowing within Nye Donglio's frozen corpse. It was a very strange sight. Nye Donglio's frozen qi and blood were sucked dry by the runes. Nye Renlong's face contorted, but he didn't say a word. The golden runes shone brightly, and Grandmaster Yuanji's hands were also trembling non-stop. His hand seals flew up, but all of a sudden, Grandmaster Yuanji's face turned pale, and his entire body started twitching. It was as if he was dancing. Nye Renlong frowned. Wasn't this Grandmaster Yuanji an orthodox Taoist fortune-teller? How could he even know the shaman sorcerer's trick of the Northern Plains barbarian tribe? However, before Nye Renlong could ask, Master Yuanji suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet as he muttered, Impossible! Impossible! Absolutely impossible! Nye Renlong looked at Master Yuanji, who seemed to be possessed, and shouted, What's going on? Did you manage to calculate Lin Ye's whereabouts? Grandmaster Yuanji seemed to wake up from Nye Renlong's angry shout. He revealed a strange expression that looked like he was crying and laughing at the same time. The young master's corpse is closely related to Lin Ye's karma, and I've already deduced his whereabouts. However, because there was still some qi and blood left, I wanted to deduce Lin Ye's true identity. In the end, I saw something I shouldn't have. Nye Renlong frowned and asked, What did you see? Grandmaster Yuanji still had a look of disbelief on his face as he said, I saw someone who shouldn't have existed. Previously, I deduced that Lin Yi had been dead for several years based on his name. I thought it was a fake name, and the result of my deduction was someone else. However, after I deduced the young master's karma, I realized that the name wasn't fake. It really existed, and the karma was implicated. Lin Yi, who had been dead for several years, killed the young master. Upon hearing this, the warriors from the memorial manor felt a chill run down their spines. Since Lin Yi had been dead for several years, then who was the person who had killed the young master? Could it be a ghost? With a horrified expression on his face, Master Yuanji continued, This is simply unimaginable. I wanted to continue my deductions and see how Lin Yi died. I wanted to know if he was a human or a ghost. But in the end, I saw a hand. That hand erased everything about Lin Yi. It was as if Lin Yi was just a memory that was easily erased by that hand. Lin Yi was already dead and didn't exist anymore. Therefore, when I deduced Lin Ye's name, I came to the conclusion that he had been dead for several years. My deduction wasn't wrong. I should say that from the moment that Hand erased everything about Lin Yi, he was already considered dead. Nie Renlong looked at Grandmaster Yuan Ji and frowned. Nie Renlong was getting impatient with Grandmaster Yuan Ji's nagging. What Hand? Erasing existence? What was that all about? This bunch of fortune-tellers played such mysterious tricks with others, yet they dared to play the same trick with him? Nie Renlong said coldly, "Don't talk so much nonsense. I don't care what happened to Lin Yi. I just want his head. Even if he's already dead, I want to kill him again. Where exactly is his current location?" Grandmaster Yuan Ji shuddered and quickly asked for a map of northern Yen. He drew a region on it and said, "It should be here. I can't deduce too much detail, but based on Lin Ye's speed, he won't be able to leave this place anytime soon." Nie Renlong picked up the map, got someone to carry the ice coffin, and left. Grandmaster Yuan Ji heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the ground, sweat dripping down his forehead. Grandmaster Yuan Ji wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the treasures that Nie Renlong had given him. A smile that was uglier than crying appeared on Grandmaster Yuan Ji's face. He had suffered a huge loss this time. That mouthful of blood just now cost Grandmaster Yuan Ji a full 10 years of his lifespan. Only the heavens knew what secrets Lin Yi had, and what kind of terrifying existence the hand that could erase a person's traces was. In any case, Grandmaster Yuan Ji had only taken a glance at Lin Ye's body, and the punishment was even more severe than peeking at heaven's secrets. He had actually lost 10 years of his lifespan. The items that Nie Renlong had given him could not make up for the lost lifespan. Grandmaster Yuan Ji was really out of luck this time. He had already decided that he would take the items and leave northern Yen. He would go to West Chu and seek refuge with a fellow cultivator from Longhu Mountain. Although that person was not a high-ranking member of Longhu Mountain, he was still a disciple of Longhu Mountain's Zhang family. Within Longhu Mountain's territory, there was no one like Nie Renlong who would force him to have his fortune read, right? In a small town in the south of Yen, Chu Xiu's face was covered as he walked forward without saying a word. For the past few days, Chu Xiu had been traveling at full speed. If he had not been extremely hungry, he would not have even eaten. In any case, at Chu Xiu's current realm, it was not a big deal to not eat for a few days, let alone a few meals. However, Chu Xiu's mental strength had been destroyed, so he had to maintain his physical strength at its peak. However, when he was about to leave the small town, he was met with dozens of warriors from the morgue. They were led by a warrior who was at the unity of heaven and man realm. They quickly checked the warriors who passed by on the road. Grandmaster Yuan Ji could only calculate the approximate location of Chu Xiu. It was impossible for him to pinpoint Chu Xiu's location. However, for the morgue, this was enough. For the northern Yen, where martial arts were not as prosperous as eastern Qi, there were not many warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Especially those who could cultivate to the unity of heaven and man realm as rogue cultivators, they were all famous figures. Therefore, the morgue only needed to check some unfamiliar warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Even if the morgue offended someone because of this, Nie Renlong could not care less. In any case, rogue cultivators couldn't afford to offend the morgue village. If the morgue village offended some big sex martial artists because of this, those people wouldn't stoop to Nie Renlong's level when they saw his crazy appearance. In such a small town, warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm were extremely conspicuous. However, in order to prevent people from hiding their auras, the people at the morgue still checked carefully. Naturally, Chu Xiu also had to hide his aura. Therefore, the cultivation he revealed was only at the three-flower realm. However, in the eyes of the people at the morgue, Chu Xiu's cultivation was still very conspicuous. Therefore, after seeing Chu Xiu, the warrior at the unity of heaven and man realm personally walked over, cupped his hands, and said, "Brother, the morgue is currently investigating the remnants of the demonic path. Please, brother, take off your mask and let me see your face." Looking at the person in front of him, Chu Xiu sighed. The warrior at the morgue suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why was this guy sighing? Of course, there was a reason for Chu Xiu to sigh. Originally, he wanted to return to Guanzhong in a low-key manner. He did not expect to have to kill again and attract a lot of trouble. It was really troublesome. The warrior suddenly felt a chill throughout his body. He felt as if he was being targeted by something terrifying. Just when the warrior was about to say something, the seemingly ordinary Jianghu wanderer in front of him suddenly erupted with a soaring demonic aura. The warrior at the morgue was suddenly shocked. At the same time, he exclaimed and immediately stabbed at Chu Xiao with his sword. Light blue gang qi suddenly burst out. However, Chu Xiao just stretched out a hand. A hand with monstrous demonic aura easily pinched the long sword. With a loud bang, the long sword was immediately twisted into pieces. Cultivating both the great Vajra divine power and the nine heavens fiend golden body, the current Chu Xiao's physical strength could not be said to be comparable to a divine weapon. At the very least, ordinary precious weapons were nothing in Chu Xiao's eyes. The warrior was shocked and wanted to retreat. However, at this moment, the blood in his body suddenly boiled and trembled, as if it was about to gush out of his body. This caused his body to suddenly freeze in place. Although it was only for a short moment, Chu Xiao's fist, which was tainted with a fierce demonic aura, had already blasted out and pierced through the chest of the warrior from the morgue. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. The warrior from the morgue fell to the ground with a loud thud with a look of disbelief in his eyes. Only then did the other warriors from the morgue awaken. Chapter 529. With Chu Xiao's current cultivation, even if he didn't use his conspicuous cultivation method, it would be easy for him to kill an ordinary unity of heaven and human realm martial artist. Moreover, for Chu Xiao, some cultivation methods were not necessarily useless, such as the demon blood technique. As long as Chu Xiao didn't completely draw out the blood and qi from his body and use the blood-dissipating divine saber, who could recognize that it was the demon blood technique? Therefore, at this time, Chu Xiao also boldly used the demon blood technique. Under the cover of the devil qi, no one could see anything unusual. The rest of the warriors from the memorial manor stared blankly at Chu Xiao. In the next moment, all of them cried out in alarm and immediately turned to flee. They had to escape. The current Chu Xiao was somewhat beyond their expectations. Previously, these martial artists of the memorial manor also thought of the scene when they encountered Chu Xiao. Therefore, the people of the memorial manor didn't split up too much. Only a few unity of heaven and human realm martial artists led the search team. According to Nie Renlong, Chu Xiao was already seriously injured, and even his spiritual force was wasted. However, who knew that this Chu Xiao was so terrifying even without using his spiritual force? Killing a unity of heaven and human realm martial artist was like killing a dog. Some manor lord had made them miserable this time. Chu Xiao took a step forward, and with a light movement, he covered a distance of over 100 feet. He smashed down with a single hand, and it was just a simple punch. Demonic qi erupted, directly crushing and shattering some of them, forcibly blowing them up. In less than a quarter of an hour, more than 10 martial artists were all killed by Chu Xiao. However, Chu Xiao also frowned. Things seemed to be a bit tricky. Although he killed the people of the memorial manor, it was impossible to slaughter the entire town. The news must have spread. Northern Yen was not Western Chu. There were deep mountains and forests everywhere, and there were places to hide. At this time, Chu Xiao could predict that his own troubles would come one after another. Things were just as Chu Xiao had predicted. He was indeed in trouble. According to the direction calculated by Grandmaster Yuan Ji, the people of Righteous Manor had almost figured out Chu Xiao's approximate position. Now that Chu Xiao's whereabouts had been exposed, as long as Chu Xiao could not fly, it would undoubtedly be easier for the people of Righteous Manor to find Chu Xiao. And the trickiest thing was not that the people of the Righteous Manor found Chu Xiao, but other people. In order to kill Chu Xiao, Nie Renlong was willing to give up his position as the manor master of the Honorable Justice Manor. The temptation was too great. Moreover, the people of Jianghu were not worried that Nie Renlong would go back on his words, because if that happened, Nie Renlong would have no place in Jianghu. His reputation would be completely ruined, and even the morgue would be shaken because of this. Nie Renlong relied on his reputation to make a living, so he had to protect his reputation at all times. He couldn't let his reputation suffer any damage. If he couldn't keep his word, it would be enough to destroy Nie Renlong's reputation in Jianghu. Because of this, not only did many people from the northern Yen martial world want to take Lin Ye's head, but even many people from eastern Qi and west Chu had come to kill him. Although they all knew that Lin Yi was strong, and the Longhu list said that Lin Yi had fought against Nie Renlong for a long time. They were blinded by greed and knew that Lin Yi was seriously injured. Therefore, they still came one after another fearlessly. On a small road in South Yan's Plain Prefecture, Chu Xiao hid his aura to the extreme and walked in a low profile. He didn't even dare to use his earth energy too ostentatiously, afraid that others would notice something. His mental strength was crippled, and his senses were suppressed to the level of an ordinary person. This was very annoying, because Chu Xiao didn't know how many eyes were watching him in the dark. He didn't even know if he had been exposed or not. This feeling of not being in his control made him very uncomfortable. At this moment, Chu Xiao's body suddenly stopped, and he looked to the side. It wasn't because Chu Xiao heard something, but because there was no movement in that direction. It was frighteningly quiet. This was only a small road, so there were some messy shrubs and other things around. Usually, there would be some sparrows, insects, and snakes making some sounds, but now it was completely silent. As if he had seen Chu Xiao's gaze, a loud shout came from that direction. Kill! As the word kill was uttered, dozens of cultivators rushed out. They brandished their weapons and slashed at Chu Xiao with resplendent astral energy. Their might was extraordinary. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes. He couldn't even find a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm. These people were really blinded by greed. They wanted to sneak attack him with just this bit of strength? As Chu Xiao punched out, demonic energy burst forth. However, there was a hint of golden light flashing around Chu Xiao's body. It was like the light of Buddha. While it was evil, it also gave Chu Xiao a sense of solemnity. Under Chu Xiao's punch, the man at the front had his earth energy torn apart. His weapon shattered, and with a loud bang, his body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. This was a true explosion. In an instant, more than 100 feet in radius was covered by an evil crimson mist. Chu Xiao's power might have awakened their hearts that were blinded by greed. Some people finally revealed a look of horror in their eyes, but it was too late. Chu Xiao was like a primordial beast as he crushed everything in his path. Moments later, all that was left on the path was a pile of horrifying broken limbs and minced meat. Chu Xiao then left expressionlessly. There were many ways to kill people, some beautiful and some not. In fact, Chu Xiao's way of killing people could be more beautiful. There was no need to make it look like a scene of dismembered corpses like this. However, he also wanted to shock the latecomers and let those idiots see clearly. Without strength, don't think about those trivial things. Otherwise you only have one life. Don't blame me for being cruel if you die without a whole body. After an hour after Chu Xiao left, dozens of people came to the path. However, the strength of these dozens of people was much higher than those before. Among them, there were several martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm. Seeing the horrible scene on the path, the expressions of those dozens of people changed slightly. A middle-aged man in a Taoist robe snorted coldly and said, "That devil Lin Yi is really cruel and merciless. These people acted too hastily and attacked before we arrived. As a result, they were killed by that devil." This middle-aged man in a Taoist robe was immortal Miao Xian, the temple master of the Miaoyu Temple in the south of Yan River. There were several beautiful Taoist nuns behind him. His Miaoyu Temple had a good reputation in the south of Yan River. However, he was not an orthodox Taoist. He practiced the Tao of dual cultivation, which was rare in Taoism. He was the only man in the entire temple. The others were his female disciples. It could be said that they were his Tao of dual cultivation. A handsome young master in his 30s, dressed in embroidered clothes, and holding a folding fan in his hand said in a deep voice, "Everyone, you've all seen Lin Ye's methods. This demon is worthy of being able to help the survivors of the 36 great bandits of the northern region turn the tables. He's even an existence that almost caused Villa Master Nye to perish together with him. He's extremely difficult to deal with. At this time, we must work together to kill Lin Yi. Don't worry. As long as we kill Lin Yi, when I become the Villa Lord of the Morgue Village, all of you will be the heroes of this battle. I will share the Morgue Village with all of you." This young man was actually more than 50 years old. He was not much younger than Nie Renlong. His name was Cui Lu, and he was quite famous in the south of Yan River. He was nicknamed Playboy. When he was young, he was one of the rare young talents in the south of Yan River. Although he was a rogue cultivator, his talent was not weak. It was said that he was fated to meet a princess of the Northern Yan, and almost became the emperor's son-in-law of the Northern Yan. However, for some reason, the matter was left unsettled. Cui Lu had been hanging around in the south of Yan River. However, he had a wide circle of friends and made many good friends in the south of Yan River. Although Cui Lu was a rogue cultivator in the first half of his life, he lived a carefree life. Now, he was no longer young, and even his carefully preserved appearance had a trace of old age. This made Cui Lu feel a sense of crisis. He probably couldn't continue living like this, and it was time to find a way out for himself and his descendants. This time, he heard that Lin Yi was wanted by Nie Renlong. He was even willing to give up the position of the leader of Lin Yi. This made Cui Lu very tempted. Therefore, he made use of the connections he had made over the years and prepared to join forces to kill Lin Yi and become the owner of the morgue. The people present were all rogue cultivators. They believed that Nie Renlong would not reject them if they joined the righteous manner. However, they would be bound to some extent. If they followed Cui Lu to kill Lin Yi, then the Lin Yi would not belong to Cui Lu alone. It would belong to all of them. They would undoubtedly have more freedom. Therefore, whether it was for friendship or for their future, most of the connections Cui Lu had made were willing to help him. Behind Cui Lu, a burly man with a strong body and cultivation of the unity of heaven and man realm said in a low voice, "Brother Cui, you've seen Lin Ye's strength. He's very difficult to deal with. What should we do now?" Cui Li's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He said, "Brother Mengang, don't worry. Lin Yi is now in the top 10 of the Longhu list. He is indeed an outstanding talent, but don't forget that he has been crippled of his mental strength. He is a blind dragon and a tiger without ears. Look at the traces on the ground. It is not too far from where they were lying in ambush to where they died. What does this prove?" This proved that Lin Yi had only discovered the whereabouts of this group of people when he was so close to them. His perception is probably crippled. Let's speed up and find a place in front of Lin Yi to set up a trap and kill him in one fell swoop. Brother Miao Xian, you are the best at setting up formations. This time, you have to work hard and set up a reliable killing formation. Taoist Miao Xian laughed heartily and hugged a plump Taoist nun beside him. He kneaded her bulging chest and said with a smile, "Brother Cui, don't worry. I'm very reliable no matter where I go. If you don't believe me, you can ask my disciples." Chapter 530. In the middle of the night, it was raining cats and dogs. Chu Xiu walked on the path in the rainy night with his gang qi protecting his body. The raindrops that fell on the gang qi were easily crushed by the gang qi and turned into mist. Thus, along the way, Chu Xiu left a trail of white mist on the path he took, which was very conspicuous. However, Chu Xiu was too lazy to cover up. Anyway, his whereabouts had been exposed. God knows how many people were ready to kill him in front of him and how many people were hanging behind him. Although his perception was gone, Chu Xiu still had a sixth sense. Anyway, Chu Xiu felt that there was killing intent shrouding him at all times. At this time, any strategy was useless. There were only two ways for Chu Xiu to survive. One was to kill his way out with his own strength. The other was to have a senior expert from the Yinma clan come to save him. Of course, Chu Xiu would not pin his hopes on the latter. The Yinma clan was not a group of good people. When they heard that he was being chased, they would come thousands of miles to rescue him, even disregarding whether they would be exposed or not. Moreover, even if someone came to save him, they would not come so quickly. After all, they did not know Chu Xiu's position. It was impossible to force a fortune teller to deduce it like the righteous manner. So even if someone from the Yinma clan came to save Chu Xiu, they could only wait for Chu Xiu's side to send the news. Who knew how many days would have passed by then? Chu Xiu would never put his life in the hands of others. So, Chu Xiu could only choose to be the first to kill his way out. Although he was being chased by so many people, it was not impossible to kill his way out. Nie Renlong was already half crippled and had no fighting strength. Later, Chu Xiu also heard some news that Han Baxin and Pang who were both injured, so the righteous manner could not send a martial Dao grandmaster to kill him. As for the martial Dao grandmasters who were rogue cultivators, they also looked down on the righteous manner's position. Martial Dao grandmasters represented the power to establish their own sections. If they wanted to establish their own forces, they would have done so a long time ago. Why would they wait here to take over the righteous manor? There were various reasons why itinerant cultivators did not establish their own forces. The position of the manor master of the congregation manor was not enough to move them. Therefore, Chu Xiu was 99% sure that the person who wanted to kill him this time would not be a martial Dao Grand Master. As long as the remaining people didn't charge at him at the same time, Chu Xiu was confident that he could kill his way out. Looking up at the sky, Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. Large raindrops fell, and Chu Xiu's forward footsteps suddenly paused. The raindrops that filled the sky actually changed shape at some point. The soft raindrops actually turned into conical sharp blades, and their speed suddenly increased countless times as they fell densely on Chu Xiu. A raindrop smashed into the ground and immediately made an explosive sound. It actually smashed a 1-meter-wide hole in the ground. It was easy to imagine what would happen if this raindrop smashed into a person's body. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. He formed a seal with his hand, and suddenly, a vast Buddhist light rippled out. However, this time, Chu Xiu's Dharma form did not condense into any Buddha statue. It was just a hazy shadow that enveloped all the raindrops, grinding and killing them. Great King Kong Divine Force. All rivers flow into the sea. It had to be said that once the Great King Kong Divine Force condensed into one's own Dharma form, it could be said to be ever-changing, and the results would be different for everyone. Although Chu Xiu had not truly condensed his own Dharma form, Chu Xiu could temporarily borrow the Dharma forms of the predecessors to deal with most situations. In the future, if Chu Xiu could really cultivate the Great King Kong Divine Force to the state where he could condense his Dharma form, he would probably not be any weaker than the predecessors. The endless raindrops were ground by the all rivers flow into the sea, and at this time, the ground under Chu Xiu's feet also began to change. The ground within a radius of several dozen feet cracked, condensed, and turned into long spears that shot towards Chu Xiu with the power of heaven and earth. With a casual punch, all the earthen spears were smashed into pieces. Then, Chu Xiu stepped on the ground, and the Buddhist light around him turned into a monstrous demonic aura that enveloped Chu Xiu. His aura was incomparably ferocious, as if an ancient demon god had descended. 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body. In fact, the 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body did not reveal too many strange phenomena. When this cultivation method was cultivated to the extreme, it could only display a powerful physical body. Therefore, Chu Xiu was not afraid of being discovered when he used it. Most importantly, apart from Lu Fengxian and his 4 subordinates, no one in the Jianghu knew what the 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body looked like. Even the level of the cultivation method was calculated by them. At this time, Chu Xiu had cultivated both the Great King Kong Divine Force and the 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body at the same time. The strength of his physical body had even reached the level of a martial arts grandmaster like Nieren Long. As Chu Xiu stepped on the ground, there was a sudden loud rumble, and the ground began to crack. Chu Xiu took 9 steps in succession, and the ground within a radius of several dozen feet was already a mess. The formation on the ground shone brilliantly, but it exploded one after another, and finally dissipated with a loud bang. In the dark forest of the rainy night, Cui Lu and dozens of martial artists walked out. Cui Lu, who was in the lead, said with some dissatisfaction, "Dao brother Miao Xian, is this how you fool me? This is the annihilation of heaven and earth annihilation formation you mentioned? Was it so easily broken by the opponent? Did you take out the array formation that you have up your sleeve?" Dao Master Miao Xian explained, "This is already the strongest formation in my Miaoyu temple. How can I hide it at this time? Brother Cui, didn't you say that Lin Ye's perception has been destroyed? How was he able to detect my surprise attack from the formation?" Cui Li's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything. "You ask me, but who do I ask?" However, it was obvious that the first step of their ambush had failed. They originally wanted to rely on the formation to trap and kill Chu Xiu first. At the very least, they wanted to seriously injure him. In the end, Chu Xiu was not injured at all, and he easily broke Dao Master Miao Xian's formation. This was clearly not in line with their plan. In fact, the reason why Chu Xiu was able to break the formation so easily was not because he had detected it in advance, but because Chu Xiu had been paying attention to his surroundings. It should be said that from the moment he killed the first group of people, Chu Xiu had been in a state of constant tension. Although his perception was gone, as long as any attack appeared within the range of his eyes and hearing, Chu Xiu would immediately detect it and take action. Looking at Cui Lu and the others, Chu Xiao said indifferently. It seems that the warning I gave you before was not enough. Isn't it good to live well? Why do you have to come and die? A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. No matter how good something is, if you lose your life, you won't be able to enjoy it no matter how powerful you are. Cui Lu said indifferently. Well said. However, there's another saying, fortune comes from danger. Lin Yi, I don't care who you are or what your strength is. Right now, you are our fortune. Although we have no enmity in the past, and to put it bluntly, I, Cui Lu, am not the kind of person who is willing to get rid of evil and uphold justice, but now that fortune is right in front of us, killing you will help us achieve our goal. Cui Lu was very straightforward. Unlike a hypocrite like Nieren Long, he was a real villain. He wanted to kill Chu Xiao, not to get rid of evil and uphold justice, nor to uphold justice, but because of Nieren Long's promise, the position of the Manor Master of Loyalty Manor. It was simple and direct, but it was irrefutable. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, if you want fortune, then come and get it. I want to see who can get this fortune. As soon as Chu Xiao's voice fell, Cui Lu took the lead and rushed forward. Among the people present, Cui Lu was the strongest. Moreover, he was also the one who organized the martial artists present to attack together. He was the one who wanted to seize the position of Manor Master of Loyalty Manor. Therefore, no matter what, Cui Lu had to be the first to attack. A folding fan made of special materials appeared in Cui Li's hand. His folding fan looked inconspicuous, but it was a 6th revolution precious weapon. The folding fan slashed horizontally like a long saber. In an instant, countless astral energy condensed into flowers and bloomed, scorching hot and fiery. Chu Xiao squinted his eyes and punched down. Boundless devil chi wrapped around Chu Xiao's fist, and in an instant, sparks flew everywhere. Chu Xiao's fist landed on the folding fan without any resistance. Cui Lu suddenly felt a blast of air attacking him, and the folding fan in his hand was directly shattered. His whole body was sent flying by Chu Xiao's punch, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A single punch. It was merely a single punch, yet the famous flower lord of the south of Yan Kingdom had been injured. Cui Lu looked at Chu Xiao in horror. What kind of cultivation technique did this guy practice? How could he be impervious to swords and spears, and impervious to fire and water? Just now, the flaming sunflower condensed from his astral energy contained the true meaning of the vast Yang Great Sun, and could burn one's chi. As long as one was touched by it, one would not be able to get rid of it. But only the heavens knew why Lin Ye's devil chi was so strong, and why his body was so tough. Cui Li's flaming sunflower didn't even touch his face before it was directly smashed. At this time, Chu Xiao's attack did not stop, and directly rushed towards Taoist Miao Xian, who was behind Cui Lu. To be honest, Chu Xiao rarely disliked a person. No one could accurately judge a person's appearance, and the saying that one's appearance was born from the heart was not 100% accurate. But after seeing Taoist Miao Xian, Chu Xiao really wanted to smash his face. This Taoist master Miao Xian had the appearance of a middle-aged man in his 40s. He could be considered square, but his face was greasy and evil. Even the trace of a smile on his face made people want to beat him up. At this time, seeing Chu Xiao rushing towards him, Taoist Miao Xian did not panic. He held the horsetail whisk in his left hand and the Dao sword in his right. One was hard and one was soft. One was yin and one was yang. The Dao sword swordsmanship was fierce and domineering, while the horsetail whisk was incomparably soft. The power of the two combined was extraordinary. But under Chu Xiao's punch, which condensed all the strength in his body, Taoist Miao Xian's horsetail whisk was smashed, and the long sword was sent flying. It was like a hot knife through butter, unstoppable. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.